Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If with another fanfiction. This is the move of What If Deku Faced His Mom's Wrath? All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. As soon as the Sports Festival Awards ceremony comes to a close, the occupants of Class 1A are ushered into a reception room for their parents to congratulate or comfort their kids. Streamers line the walls, groups of balloons float aimlessly with the movement of the people in the room, and the atmosphere is calm and happy, full of hugs, tears, and filled to the brim with smiling faces. To Katsuki, it's revolting. That is, until he spots his own mother, straining to get to him through the crowd of superhuman teenagers and adults that are quickly getting the memo to step aside as the furious parent storms past, headed straight to where her son is leaning against the wall, arms crossed, and glaring at anyone who comes within 15 feet of him. She looks sad. Katsuki huffs, pushing off the wall to meet her with a carefully neutral expression. Hey Emo dash. Slap. There's a moment of shocked silence as all conversation in the room abruptly halts, parents, students, and pro-heroes turning toward the unmistakable sound of skin on skin. Katsuki takes a deep breath, head tilted to the side, face carefully blank as the sense of someone watching him tenfolds. He knows the handprint-shaped mark is already forming. His mother plays volleyball on the weekends. She's strong and she's mad. Damn it. Not here. What the F was that? You needed restraints? You just about killed that gravity girl, and you destroyed half the goddamn stadium? You ungrateful little sheet. Who the F do you think you are? Katsuki moves his head slowly, conscious of the ache pulsing through his skull, and mutters only loud enough for her to hear. Oh yeah, 'cause hitting your kid in a room full of people really just highlights your anger management? Slap. Katsuki WHPs his head back into place as soon as it's halted the momentum from the strike. Screw the potential concussion, he said. Can you not hit me, for once in your shitty life, while we have a FING conversation? He growls, still conscious of what feels like millions of eyes burrowing into his back. Could you not go F overboard for once in your miserable life? I mean seriously, Endeavor's kid was unconscious. So was that brown-haired girl. These are your F classmates. She yells back, arms gesturing wildly. Katsuki's eyes narrow and he wills himself not to flinch, as the flailing limbs near his face. Half and round face can take care of themselves, and it's not like there weren't teachers watching. They're fine, and fighting was the whole DMN point of the FING festival. He sneers, trying to placate her into calming the F down before she does something he can't talk his way out of later. His attempt is in vain, however, as she continues to scream, spit flying from her lips and onto his face. He grimaces but doesn't dare move to wipe it away. You still could have taken some F restraint, brat. Now the whole world knows how much of an uncontrolled freak you are. Katsuki grits his teeth. He's not affected by her words, hasn't been for years now, but hearing her say it feels different when he's surrounded by his peers rather than in the privacy of their home. Nevertheless, he grudgingly appreciates Deku's attempt to intervene. The little dumbass squeezes his way in between mother and son, raising his hands in a calming gesture with a mollifying smile stretched across freckled cheeks. Mitsuki-san? Kachan won the tournament. Even if he was a little uncontrolled at the end, he put up an honest fight and came out on top. I think you should be proud of him. The old hag scoffs, not at all hindered by the smaller boy, and continues to yell at Katsuki. So you've sunk so low as to let Izuku stand up for you? Demon Katsuki, that's a new record? A protective rage builds in Katsuki's chest, and he half glares, half shoves Deku out of the way, urging him to leave well the F alone. He can deal with his own DM and mother. He isn't standing up for me, you FHE. And I won, didn't I? Who gives a shit if you won? You're still a failure, aren't you, Katsuki? Katsuki feels a vein pop in his neck as his clenched fists turn white. Stop, damn it. Not here. This is just like that F sludge villain. You were too brash to consider the possibility of getting yourself caught, and once you are, you're too weak to get yourself out. Katsuki's lip curls. The villain's quirk was taking my explosions and his body was literally made out of water. How the ever-loving was I supposed to fight that? Well, you should have thought of that before running right into its path. Check your temper next time, or you're gonna end up with a dead classmate. Mitsuki snarls, stepping forward to shove Katsuki back, and pushing with every point she makes. How about Gravity Girl? Todoroki? Kirishima? Leave shitty hair out of this. Katsuki growls, glancing furtively around the room. Aizawa-sensei and All Might look about 2 seconds from sticking their noses where they don't belong, so he stops their not-so-subtle movement toward him with a warning glare. Oh, did I hit a nerve? Found yourself a friend, did you? You seemed to have no restraint kicking his butt earlier. He is hard to get rid of as little as Zuko? You gonna shut him out too? Katsuki exhales, eyes growing dangerously dark as his voice lowers. You. Mitsuki scoffs, oh, real threatening. Don't you pull that bullshit on me, brat. Okay, those are the first words she didn't yell. Katsuki thinks to himself with no small amount of relief. He can probably get her to cool off soon, or just plain take this outside. He's not picky, so he pulls the one trick he knows will get her to follow him without fail, turning on his heel and stalking out of the room. Those present, part before him, the few bold enough to meet his eyes, wearing sympathetic or horrified expressions. It makes him want to punch the looks right off their faces, but he holds himself back if only to guarantee his old hag gets the out of Dodge as quickly as physically possible. I don't need these extras, goddamn pity. Katsuki! Get your butt back here right now. Mitsuki screams, stomping after him, enraged by the show of disobedience. Katsuki lets his middle finger speak for him as he blasts the doors open and disappears into the night. He can hear his mother's enraged footsteps as she follows after him, but he's planning to be long gone by the time she gets the door open again. As the door slams shut for the second time that night, the room becomes cloaked in a heavy silence, broken only by the thoughts present in everyone's minds. He didn't even fight back. Asu. So unlike him, Zero. If it was one of us, he would have blown the room to pieces, Uraraka. I see where he got his temper. Todoroki. Is it like this at home? Yaoyorozu. Kirishima takes a deep breath, turning to his moms with an apologetic smile. I'm gonna go check on him. Finding Bakugo proved to be a task much more difficult than Aijuru originally planned for. The explosive teen's mom was still prowling the parking lot, muttering under her breath angrily, and Aijuru startled when she turned blazing red eyes on him long enough to confirm that he wasn't who she was looking for. But miniature heart attacks aside, the redhead was relieved that Bakugo was at the very least away from her, wherever that was. But seriously, where is he? Aijuru chews his lip as he racks his brain. It's gotta be somewhere familiar, a place his friend could go without thinking about where his feet were taking him. The argument he'd had was been pretty intense, so it had to be an area Bakugo felt safe. Somewhere he had to himself, but with good vantage points and escape routes. They'd done enough exercises in underground heroics with Aizawa-sensei that finding a strategic position is basically second nature, and with his mom close by, there's no way Bakugo would let himself get cornered again. Aijuru's brow furrows. The classroom? No, it'd probably be locked, and Bakugo didn't seem to be the type of guy to find a dark, empty room comforting. Maybe one of the training grounds? No, though it'd be farther away and probably secluded enough for him to work out any lingering emotions. The blonde would know that it'd be the first place anyone would look for him. If Aijuru had to guess, he'd say his explosive friend was somewhere nearby, sulking or blowing off steam. However, after 20 minutes of searching, Aijuru's no closer to locating the guy, and he's starting to get frustrated. He'd run into Aizawa-sensei, Present Mike, and All Might, all looking for the teen in question, but none of them had any luck locating the blonde either. Honestly, Aijuru's a little surprised that they hadn't sent him back to the celebration, but he figures his tentative friendship with Bakugo would probably end up helping them out if he could actually manage to find the dude. Wait. I've got it. Aizawa's face breaks into a grin in a sudden moment of clarity. The roof. It's relatively close with plenty of vantage points, and Bakugo would be able to quickly blast his way to the top using his quirk. Also, if the blonde's mom was similar at home to what Aizawa had seen earlier, school's probably Bakugo's safe place. Besides, the roof is unexpected enough that no one would look for him there, and Bakugo could have the space he needed to breathe. Aizawa lets out a sigh of relief when he spots his friend exactly where he'd expected the guy to be, sending a quick text with his location and "found him" to Aizawa-sensei, before turning his attention to the blonde. Bakugo either hasn't noticed Aizawa or is ignoring him altogether. He's pressed up against the railing, arms resting on the bar in front of him, legs over the edge, and staring intently up at the stars as if the faraway pinpoints of light are the only things keeping him grounded. For a moment, Aizawa pauses. In all honesty, he doesn't think he's ever seen his explosive friend look so peaceful. The ever-present harsh lines of anger are practically non-existent, his brow smooth and face pensive as he studies the night sky. Heck, even the teen's shoulders are fully relaxed, and Aizawa has known the guy long enough to recognize their rising as the first indicator that Bakugo's getting defensive, which admittedly, an argument could be made for that being his constant state. Aizawa hates to break the obviously tranquil moment Bakugo's having, but he needs to make sure that his friend's okay, so he steps forward. "Hey man, you alright?" Aizawa asks softly, voice carrying in the relative silence of the night. Bakugo doesn't even spare him a glance. "Get lost, shitty hair." The way that phrase is said causes Aizawa to hesitate once again. He's used to those words being laced with a hint of annoyance or irritation, but right now, the blonde's tone is defeated and absolutely exhausted. Aizawa reflexively hardens his fists in determination. He's not gonna leave his bestie like that, so he joins his friends sitting against the railing, letting the minutes pass in comfortable silence as he thinks carefully about his next words. Eventually, he settles on just addressing the previous argument, assuming the blonde isn't one for subtleties, and glances at Bakugo, whose eyes are still locked on the stars. Is she always like that? For a moment Aizawa thinks his friend missed the question, and he opens his mouth to ask again, but a soft, gravelly voice stops the words before they can form. "Yeah." Aizawa blinks, surprised both by the answer and how easily he got it. Though now that he's closer, Bakugo's posture is completely out of character, slumped and defeated. Nothing like the eccentric, explosion-loving teenager Aizawa befriended during the US. He can't think of a proper response to that, so he lets the silence stretch, hoping an adult will get here quickly with answers to the questions Aizawa's afraid to ask. A quiet sigh startles the redhead out of his pondering, and he turns his attention back to Bakugo as he begins speaking. "I hate that she did that in front of the entire class. I knew it was coming, but I was hoping she'd at least have the effing decency to let me have it later." The blonde mutters, letting out a quiet, self-deprecating huff. "Let you have it?" Aizawa repeats, horror rising in the pit of his stomach. The slap and way Bakugo's head had snapped to the side, play on repeat in his mind's eye, making him nauseous. "Bakugo, does she hit you at home?" Bakugo scoffs derisively, turning his face away, but the silence speaks for him and Aizawa brings a hand up to cover his mouth, feeling sick at the sheer implication. "Dude, you need to tell someone." "Can't." Bakugo huffs, the words sounding painful to admit. "What do you mean you can't? You're in danger, man." Aizawa protests, indignant on his friend's behalf. "Do you think I don't effing know that?" The blonde hisses, fire in his tone. Aizawa's argument catches in his throat, mouth gaping as he takes in the moisture gathered in the corners of Bakugo's eyes. He's never seen Bakugo cry. The boy was strong to a fault, and everyone knew it. Even if the tears had yet to fall, the fact they there speaks volumes about the blonde's emotional state, and Aizawa's own eyes prick in sympathy. "I know, shitty hair." Bakugo's voice breaks and he wipes angrily at the moisture gathered in his crimson orbs. "God damn it, I've known for a long time, but it's complicated. I can't afford to go spreading shit around right now." "But," Aizawa begins again, but Bakugo cuts him off. "No, I'm not gonna FNG tell anyone. Give it a rest." Aizawa clenches his jaw, leaning forward to put a hand on his friend's shoulder. "Please man, I know it's gotta be really scary, but our teachers could help. All we've gotta do is tell them and dash. Leave it shitty hair. Bakugo yells, shoving Aizawa off him, angry tears flying from the corners of his eyes at the movement. Aizawa feels his own vision blur as he lands a few feet away from the pavement. His best friend has been in pain right under everyone's noses all this time, and no one had noticed. There has to be something he could do to help. Bakugo, please. He tries again, desperately reasoning with his friend. You aren't safe. We're training to be motherfucking heroes, learning self-defense, and pushing our quirks every FING day. I'm as safe as I can well get right now. Bakugo retorts with no small amount of venom. No, you're not. Kirishima yells back, you still have to go home every day. You go back there and are abused. Don't use that word. Bakugo snaps, expression morphing into something dark and utterly closed off. But oh, you don't understand and you could never. Bakugo's voice breaks, and he turns away, cursing under his breath. You could never understand, shitty hair. Just stop trying. Aizawa can feel the exact moment his heart breaks for his friend. Bakugo's upset again, and this time it's all his fault, but he can't just let this go. He'll never forgive himself if he doesn't try his absolute best to help. You're my best friend, Bakugo. I can't let you go home and be hurt like that. It's not right. Bakugo's voice is rough and gives away more emotion than Aizawa's ever heard from him when he whispers. Shitty hair. Aizawa feels his tears overflow, coursing down his cheeks in frustration. Bakugo, please. Let me help you. He pleads, one last time, hoping he can get through. But I don't want your FING help. Leave me the hell alone already, damn it. Bakugo spits, lighting up his hands and blasting away from the redhead. In the blink of an eye, Aizawa's alone on the roof. For a moment he stares blankly at the spot his friend just occupied, tears still running uncontrollably down his cheeks. Then he calls Aizawa. Shoyuta seriously considers turning in his 2 weeks the moment he catches sight of his most bull-headed student punching the sheet out of a brick wall. He'd gotten a text from Kirishima not 5 minutes ago, saying that Bakugo had been located and was en route when his phone rang. A very distressed Kirishima then informed him that the boy had blasted off to who knows where, and basically admitted that his mom smacked him around at home in the process. The moment he'd hung up, Shoyuta promptly turned toward Nisa's office and used the camera system to track the kid down. So here he is, watching Bakugo bust open his hands with the raw power of someone so emotionally constipated that even the most cheerful and optimistic student of Class 1A couldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. This is going to be fun. Bakugo! He calls, adopting a stern tone over the sound of explosions and crumbling brick. Bakugo snarls, not seeming the least bit surprised by the intrusion of his homeroom teacher. Shoyuta, however, has been teaching teenagers for years now and is not easily deterred by attitude. Do I need to be concerned about the safety of your household? He asks bluntly, hoping to goad an honest answer out of the kid. Bakugo's next punch is laced with a significantly larger explosion than the last, and there's a dangerous edge to his voice as he repeats his earlier statement. Shoyuta sighs, softening his tone. This particular student generally doesn't respond well to kind words and a gentle approach, but the situation calls for a little more tact than Shoyuta would usually grant, and he really doesn't need Chio opening a new one when he brings the kid in for the damage he's inevitably causing himself at the moment. Answer the question, Bakugo. There's a silence broken only by miniature explosions and bricks crumbling from two enraged fists. Shoyuta pinches the bridge of his nose. You and I both know what I'm asking here. Don't make the mistake of turning down help. Bakugo's scowl deepens. I don't need your effing help. There's nothing wrong with my demon house. He growls, slamming his fist into the wall so hard that the structure shakes. Shoyuta winces in sympathy. This needs to stop. Can't do that, kid. You're under my protection on and off campus. Bakugo spins on a heel, throwing his hands in the air in exasperation. Well, I'm fine. Shoyuta raises an eyebrow, noting the way his student is subtly shaking from quirk exhaustion. So that slap was out of the ordinary? Sure. The kid grumbles, going back to glaring a hole in the quickly demolishing brick. Not the answer I was looking for. Shoyuta remarks dryly. Bakugo growls, shoulders rising in irritation. Goddammit, it's not normal. That good enough for you? Shoyuta activates his quirk. Try again. I gave you my effing answer. The kid hisses, hand twitching in preparation to punch the wall again, but stops, either the blood dripping onto the pavement or pain from the movement holding him back. Shoyuta expects it may be both, and he drags a hand down his face, breathing through his frustration. I'm not letting you go home to an unsafe environment, kid. It's not unsafe. Bakugo yells, spinning around to glare at Shoyuta. The pro hero only blinks, taking a new approach. Why are you protecting her? A vein in Bakugo's temple pops, but his mouth stays stubbornly closed. Answer the question, kid. Bakugo inhales sharply, seeming to mentally count to 10 before speaking. I'm not protecting anyone. My house is fine. Shoyuta raises an unimpressed eyebrow, severely doubting that, but impressed by the steady tone the teenager is keeping nonetheless. I've seen you come to school with bruises before. The kid looks away, fists clenching regardless of the way it pulls at his raw knuckles. I train with friends. Like hell you do. Leave me the F alone. Nothing's F wrong and I'm tired of this sheet. Bakugo snaps, turning back to the wall, and slamming his fist into it one last time. Shoyuta sighs, I'm just trying to help you, kid. I don't need your effing help. Bakugo grumbles. Alright, that's fine. Shoyuta finally relents, admitting defeat. Are you okay? Peachy. Bakugo huffs, turning his face so Shoyuta has a full view of the red mark dominating the side. Doesn't even hurt. Shoyuta blinks slowly. I wasn't asking about your face, though we're going to Recovery Girl to get your hands checked out later. I'm talking about the things your mother said. I've seen you take worse hits than that and get back up swinging, but she dragged your dirty laundry out in front of the entire year, and her words weren't exactly motherly or acceptable to say to any child, ever. Bakugo's eyes widen fractionally, before narrowing at his teacher's face with suspicious scrutiny. Shoyuta allows the kid to study him. It's a little unnerving having someone normally so volatile look at him with nothing but cautious pensiveness, but whatever the kid sees in the pro hero apparently satisfies him, because in the next instant, Bakugo's shoulders lose some of their tension. What do you mean? The suspicion in his tone, though warranted, still sends a little stab of disappointment through Shuta's chest. I heard what she was yelling. The whole room did, and I'm not going to excuse that kind of behavior toward one of my students. Bakugo scowls, I don't need you to protect me. I didn't say that you did. But it sure helps. Shoyuta remarks with a casual shrug. So you want to change your answer? Bakugo pauses, and for a moment, Shuta's sure the blonde's going to give in and tell him what he needs to hear to remove the kid from what all intents and purposes seems like a horrible living situation, but the silence stretches on and the kid's posture only stiffens. Finally, a quiet no rings through the empty training ground. Shoyuta lets out a defeated sigh. The door swings open without a sound, and as Katsuki glances furtively into the darkened living room, he lets out a sigh of relief. She's not here. Aizawa had dragged him to Recovery Girl after the aggressive attempts to shove his nose where it didn't belong, and the healing coupled with a long lecture on self-preservation made Katsuki miss his curfew. After today's yelling match, he'd been afraid his mom would be waiting for him at the door, but the lack of lights and eerily quiet house soothe his frayed nerves, as he assumes he's made it back unnoticed. Hello, Katsuki. A voice calls in a sickeningly sweet tone and the lights flicker on as he slips his shoes off. He turns, shoving his hands into his pockets in an attempt to hide their shaking. What do you want, hag? His head jerks forward as she whacks him, making the room temporarily spin. That's no way to greet your mother. Damn it, I'm too tired for this sheet. Katsuki opens his mouth to say whatever the F he needs to, in order to get to his room and crash for 14 hours, but a movement in the corner of his eye draws his attention. His dad enters the living room from the hallway behind Mitsuki, making a few frantic motions prompting Katsuki to go along with whatever the old hag's saying, but the blonde teen disregards the JSL when he catches sight of a bruise on his father's wrist. It's fresh, slowly turning a reddish purple, and spotted in 5 places. Though the dark hallway makes for some weird lighting, Katsuki would know a mark like that anywhere, and he sees red. His dad may be an absolute idiot for sticking with the out-of-control mess that is Katsuki's old hag, but the guy is also the kindest person Katsuki know, and no one f's with his dad. The F do you think you're going off about? You already hit me in front of the entire FING class. Was that not enough for you? Katsuki spits, using one hand to fingerspell sorry, hoping his dad has enough time to get away before shit turns ugly. The beach could do whatever she wanted to Katsuki, but she wasn't laying a finger on his dad. As Mitsuki rises to the bait, and the all-too-familiar screaming of a sheet fit sends his dad disappearing back into the hall, Katsuki lets a smirk tug at his lips. You're not getting through me, beach? Long day? Hisashi asks sympathetically as he enters the empty break room to find his husband with his head planted on the desk in front of him. Shoyuta grunts. Hisashi's laughter fills the air and soothes Shuta's beyond frayed nerves. I'm gonna take that as a yes. How'd your chat with Bakugo go? His mother is quite a piece of work. The blonde man asks conversationally, reaching for Shuta's shoulders and rubbing the tension away. Shoyuta feels his frustration begin to ease at his husband's presence, and the fingers working the stiffness out of his shoulders as he slowly sits back in his chair. The kid's stubborn as a mule and refuses to accept help of any kind. It's exhausting. I pulled out every stop I could think of, but he still wouldn't even admit that there was something going on. Hisashi makes a sympathetic noise in the back of his throat. Sounds a lot like you at his age. Shoyuta sighs heavily, running a hand down his face. That's exactly the problem. It took you almost 2 years to get me out of that house, and even then it was only because of a slip-up. I don't know how long Bakugo's mother has been abusing him, but he's completely halting any attempts to help. There's gotta be something else going on, something I'm missing? Hisashi hums thoughtfully, planting a chaste kiss on his head. Don't give up just yet, Sho. You managed to get him to talk at least somewhat, right? Shoyuta nods distractedly, leaning into his husband like a touch-starved cat. Yeah, for a moment there, the kid looked like he was sold, but something held him back. Try again. Hisashi states simply. Use the same subject that you managed to reach him with today, and drive the point home. If you plant a seed of trust, he'll eventually do the rest. Shoyuta tips his head back to meet Hisashi's vivid green eyes, lips pulling in a frown. I don't want him to wait. He shouldn't have to stay in an unsafe environment when he's got so many other options available. Does he know about those options? Hisashi prompts with a knowing smile. Shoyuta pauses, considering. I'm actually not sure. Hisashi grins. Well then there's your answer. He's not gonna throw himself into a situation he knows nothing about, so make sure he understands that he's got people to depend on. Shoyuta turns around to wrap his husband in a hug, breathing in the calming scent of vanilla, pine, and coconut hairspray. You always know what to do. Hisashi laughs. I learned from the best. Katsuki strolls into class with his hands jammed into his pockets, and a scowl on his face that only deepens when the room goes quiet at his entrance. He knows he looks tired as shit, and he knows exactly what the extras are staring at, given his hag of a mother couldn't even bother to hit him on the same FING side twice in a row so he'd have an excuse for the ugly purple bruise on his jaw, but his usual bullshit excuse about getting into trouble with the neighborhood gang isn't going to fly anymore, and that alone is pissing him off. So he glares away the 19 pairs of concerned eyes, daring them to test him as he kicks his feet up on his desk harder than strictly necessary. Are you dash? Deku starts to mutter, but Katsuki cuts him off with a low growl. Shut it. Bro, what happened? Kirishima exclaims loudly, quickly making his way to the blonde's desk. Honestly, sometimes Katsuki wants to kiss shitty hair and his stupidly perfect timing. Training. He spits, mildly with a non-committal shrug of his shoulders. With who? That's a nasty black eye, man. Kirishima exclaims, looking at him with wide, probing eyes, and a small furrow dampening his normally cheerful expression. Shit. Katsuki forgot that shitty hair is in on his current home situation. He opens his mouth to damage control, but the meaningful clearing of a throat catches the attention of Class 1A. Students shuffle quickly back to their seats as Aizawa-sensei wriggles out of his sleeping bag, and again, Katsuki thanks the timing of those around him as he lets himself relax into the drone of another mundane school day. Katsuki flinches as the bell signaling the end of class and the beginning of lunch rings. He's managed to keep his classmates off his back during lessons so far, if only because of the teacher's interference. Normally, the extras respect his strive to be the best at everything, grades included, but for some FING reason, the consequences of interrupting his focus are completely ignored today as their concern overpowers all normal inhibitions. Deku especially is grating on his FING nerves. Katsuki's caught the nerd mumbling multiple times about his theories on what exactly happened to the blonde's face, and the accuracy of them is really starting to PSS him off. Not to mention the 19 pairs of curious eyes burrowing into his back all effing morning long. However, his main concern isn't actually the whole class. Bakugo! Dunce Face and Tape Arms yell in tandem, practically vaulting over their desks to get to him. Hey bro! Shitty Hair calls, waving excitedly like he hadn't had an entire FANG conversation with Katsuki this morning. Raccoon Eyes throws her arms in the air as if to hug him from 2 rows of desks away with an exclamation of, "Baku babe. What happened to your face, man?" Dunce Face questions, reaching for the black eye, only to have it slapped away roughly by a calloused hand. Your mom is FING wild. Are you okay, dude? Tape Arms questions with a searching gaze. Were you seriously training after winning the sports festival? Raccoon Eyes screeches, flabbergasted at the mere idea. Deku's flap uselessly at his overzealous classmates. Hey guys, let's not crowd him. Seriously man, none of us. Even landed a solid hit on you during the festival. Who the hell are you training with? Earphone Jacks asks, giving him a once-over with a critical eye. Katsuki sighs. His main concern is the group dubbed the Baku Squad. He has no FING idea why the idiots hang around him so much, and though he secretly appreciates their presence, they're probably the nosiest people in the class. Did you run into a door or something? Dunce Face asks, causing a few classmates to snicker. Katsuki shoots him a glare. Does your whole family have anger issues? Cause yesterday was intense. Round Face exclaims, slapping her hands over her mouth as she realizes how insensitive her statement sounds. As the class dissolves into chaos, Katsuki internally groans. He'd intentionally gotten to school right before the bell, knowing that Aizawa-sensei would put a stop to the meddlesome extras, but since they had midnight's class before lunch, there was no conveniently placed, overprotective adult to keep the group of idiots from breathing down his FING neck. As heroes in training, we need to learn when to give people space. Please extract yourself from Bakugo at once. Four Eyes shouts, his arm chopping and strategic placement in front of Katsuki signaling the end of the madness. Thank you, Ida. Aizawa drawls from the doorway, startling Raccoon Eyes and Dunce Face so bad that they jump. They turn to him sheepishly, conscious of their previous actions towards their friend, but Aizawa ignores them, brandishing a piece of notebook paper like a torch in pitch darkness, and Katsuki stands, visibly relieved. Take this to Recovery Girl and get yourself checked out. You can take one classmate. The rest of you will go to lunch and refrain from crowding an injured student in the future. Aizawa growls, pointedly looking at the group of extras gathered around Katsuki's desk like puppies with separation anxiety, quirk activating in a not-so-subtle threat. Katsuki snatches the note without a second glance, calling over his shoulder as he strolls out. Come on, shitty hair. He doesn't wait to see the obnoxiously excited look on the redhead's face, knowing a moment's hesitation could be the point in which he snaps, stalking through the rush of kids heading to the cafeteria. Going upstream should have been difficult with the sheer number of hungry students heading toward the promise of food, but something in Katsuki's expression causes the extras to part like the Red Sea before him, scrambling out of his way with mildly panicked expressions. Katsuki would be proud of his finely tuned glare if he wasn't using every ounce of willpower to keep his raging anger in check. Set off doesn't touch how mad he is. His home life is his FING business, but because his hag of a mother couldn't conquer her shitty temper until they weren't surrounded by an entire class of to-be heroes and half the FING staff, it was now becoming common knowledge that Bakugo Katsuki is weak enough to let his mommy smack him around. Each invasive question and concerned look only draws him closer to blowing up every unlucky fucker who happens to be standing in the blast zone when he snaps. Katsuki doesn't want their DMN pity. No one had offered it before, and he sure as hell wasn't asking for it now. He's at UA to become the best so that he and Dad can get out of that godforsaken house as soon as FNG possible, not to be looked down on for one FNG slip-up. Bakugo! Shitty hair calls from somewhere behind him, but Katsuki doesn't turn around. Bro, hold up a sec. Katsuki rolls his eyes with a th, halting and letting the redhead catch up to him as the last of the hungry students file past him. Kirishima spends a few moments breathing for breath, but recovers quickly, standing from his hunched position with a grin. Dude, I don't know how you got through that mess so easily. I was dying out there. Keep up? Katsuki sneers, not in the mood for small talk. Kirishima gives him a 1,000-watt smile. Sure thing. Thanks for waiting up for me. Whatever. Katsuki huffs, turning on his heel to continue walking now that the halls are mostly empty. He could pretend to be annoyed at shitty hair, but the guy's actually pretty refreshing to be around. Something about the way he's kind to everyone and everything, and brings out the best in people with sheer determination and a little patience without babying or looking down on him, always soothes Katsuki's ever-present anger. The guy reminds him of Dad. However, as every reflective surface deems it necessary to shove the state of Katsuki's face back into the forefront of his mind, he knows there are questions coming. So are you really okay? There it is. I'm fine. Katsuki bites out, hoping the optimistic teen will take a hint and let the subject drop. But Kirishima only gives a dissatisfied hum that for some reason only pisses Katsuki off more. He stops dead in the middle of the hallway, shoving his hands into his pockets as he turns to his friend. What the F do you want from me, shitty hair? Kirishima doesn't even blink. I want you to be safe. Katsuki huffs, continuing to stomp his way to Recovery Girl's office, but Hair for Brains only laughs. Hey, if you don't want to talk about it, that's cool. Katsuki doesn't respond, but his shoulders lose some of their tension. Anyway, did you see that clip from All Might's fight this morning? Shitty hair continues, stepping level with the blonde. It was so manly. There was this villain who took a whole subway train hostage, but All Might swooped in there and dumped the guy in a river before he could even blink. Imagine being able to move that fast. Makes me wish I had a speed quirk. You're FING bulletproof, dumbass. Katsuki scoffs, rolling his eyes. Why the hell would you want to run away when you can just stand there and intimidate the shit out of those villainifus when their puny little guns do F all to you? Ah man, you're right. Shitty hair beams at him, and Katsuki finds himself looking away quickly. Goddammit, he's too FNG bright. You know, I've never actually hardened against a bullet, Kirishima comments thoughtfully. I totally need to test that. Do you think Aizawa-sensei's got a gun? Katsuki's head snaps around fast enough to hear his neck crack. Don't just FNG shoot yourself. I wouldn't try without Aizawa-sensei and Recovery Girl nearby. I may be an idiot, but I'm not suicidal. Kirishima laughs, and Katsuki lets out a breath he didn't know he'd taken, shoving the door to Recovery Girl's office open harder than strictly necessary. It hits the wall with considerable force, but he pays it no mind. Recovery Girl, on the other hand, turns away from her computer with a frown, unimpressed at the display. There's no need to break my things, young man. Katsuki rolls his eyes, but shoves the crumpled piece of paper under her nose wordlessly. She takes it with a sigh, mouth tightening as she reads the contents. Take a seat over there, I'll be with you in a moment. Bakugo huffs, plopping onto the nearest bed with his arms crossed. There's a moment of rapid typing before she closes her laptop, hops off her stool, and makes her way to Katsuki's side. All right, mister. What seems to be the matter? Katsuki blows out an irritated breath. Took you long enough? No need to be so impatient. She reprimands, rapping his knee with her cane. Now, where are you hurt? Katsuki glances imperceptibly at Kirishima, willing the teen to take a hint and scram, but the idiot just sends him a 1,000-watt smile and a thumbs up. Katsuki takes a deep breath of irritation, pointing to his face, right shoulder, left wrist, and general ribcage. Recovery girl tuts, grabbing his face to prod at the bruises. Instantly, Katsuki locks his expression, keeping it as neutral as possible even when she pokes at the more sensitive areas. Well, your jaw's not broken, recovery girl hums thoughtfully, though I'm sure you already knew that. Unfortunately, you're going to have to take that shirt off so I can take a look at your shoulder and ribs. A rush of cold fear goes down Katsuki's spine, and his entire body freezes. As soon as Shuda's lecture for 1CS General Education is finished, he dismisses himself and makes a beeline for Recovery Girl's office. How is he? He asks without preamble upon opening the door. Chio spins around in her chair, giving Shoyuta a look. That boy was in this office 3 times in the past 48 hours. You better not be planning on sending him here again, his stamina simply can't take the strain. I wasn't the one who gave him those injuries and you know it. Shoyuta states bluntly, crossing his arms with a huff of annoyance. Chio closes her eyes briefly, lips pursing. I'm well aware of the Oi situation pertaining to his mother. Wonderful. Shoyuta deadpants. Now are you going to tell me how bad it was? Or do I need to start listing every injury my student tried and failed miserably to hide in class today? Chio smirks, a knowing twinkle in her eyes. My student? Shoyuta glares at her over the folds of his capture weapon. Limp in his left leg, hunched shoulders indicating something wrong with his side or ribs, subconscious rubbing at his left wrists, not to mention the large bruise overtaking half of his jaw, and dash. All right, don't get your boxers in a twist. Chio interrupts, disgruntled, and spinning back to her desk with arms raised in defeat. Shoyuta conveniently pretends not to hear the scathing mutters about patient confidentiality being a joke to most of the UA staff, as he accepts the folder passed unceremoniously over Chio's shoulder, automatically flipping it open, only to draw in a sharp breath. There's a clear pocket with a dozen or so pictures of a familiar blonde, looking equally sad and uncomfortable as he perches on the very edge of one of the UA medical cots. The bruises the teenager sports cause Shoyuta to wince. Looks like he was right about the kid's side being bruised, and there's a distinctly feminine handprint around a swollen wrist. The bruise on his jaw looks significantly worse in the lighting of the infirmary too, and with closer examination, is that the imprint of a shoe on his knee? Tearing his eyes away from the sight, he focuses on the following pages which appear to be a medical report of each injury and its severity in detail, right down to the note about the lack of offensive injuries with an explanation of the effect Bakugo's quirk has on his body. I got everything there from the boy himself, Chio states, drawing Shuda's attention away from the folder in his he's gripping with white knuckles. She grimaces slightly. Well, everything except an explanation of how he managed to get so beat up after making it out of the sports festival without much more than a few scrapes and minor bruising. Shoyuta lets his eyes drop back down to the pages in his hands, nodding distractedly. His classmates were also suspicious, especially after the show his mother gave us a few days ago. Smart kids? Chio remarks, I bet they're planning on cornering him later. Shoyuta hums, making a mental note to hold the blonde teen after class. He took Kirishima with him. That must have helped with his temper during your prodding. Chio snorts. The opposite actually. Wouldn't say a word while the kid was in the room. Once his friend left though, he was surprisingly complacent. Shoyuta frowns at that, glancing up from the folder. Normally, Kirishima's the only student who's able to get through to Bakugo, and for him to shut down that emotional connection with the redhead during what was probably a stressful and uncomfortable procedure isn't a good sign. That's concerning, he remarks, but Recovery Girl rolls her eyes in an almost affectionate way. Teenagers are easily embarrassed, especially ones with Bakugo's level of confidence. Kirishima's reaction certainly didn't help matters though. The kid looked like he was about to start bawling right then and there. Took 5 minutes to convince him to go back to class, and it was only after Bakugo told him to scram that Kirishima actually left. Shoyuta nods slowly, making a mental note to talk to both of them in the near future. Have you reported any of this? Recovery tuts in exasperation. Would have loved to, but Nisa's apparently building a case against Mitsuki-san, and wanted to have a staff meeting about it first. Shoyuta can't help the frustrated huff that escapes his lips. He needs out of the house, not All Might hovering over him like an overprotective buffoon. Recovery girl whacks him not scantly with her cane. Oh, shut it, Shoyuta. You know as well as I do that this kind of thing requires patience. Shoyuta rubs at the quickly forming knot on his head ruefully. The sooner he gets out of that house, the better. Agreed. She hesitates before fixing him with a look. Keep an eye on him, would you? The boy refused to rest more than a class PRD after I healed him, claiming that he was fine damn it and needed to get back to class. Shoyuta sighs, snapping the folder closed and sliding it back onto Recovery Girl's desk. Thanks, Chiyo. I'm gonna tell Hisashi not to burst the poor kid's eardrums when he falls asleep in English. Chiyo smirks, waving him away with her free hand. Yeah, go reel in that idiot husband of yours. Shoyuta scoffed, as if anyone can shut him up, falling on deaf ears as the door shuts behind him with a resounding thud. Bakugo! A stern voice calls out to Katsuki just as he's about to sulk out the door, and he rolls his eyes, tipping his head back to grunt noncommittally. A word. He knows that tone. It was nice knowing ya. Dunce face mutters, with a playful slap on the shoulder. Katsuki makes a show of growling and shoving the boy, pointedly not acknowledging the worried look. Shitty hair shoots him. The classroom door slams shut behind him, cutting off the loud arguing over whether ketchup is considered a smoothie or a sauce that Tapeface and Raccoon Eyes are currently engrossed in, and the sudden silence weighs heavily on Katsuki's ears. Aizawa gestures to a seat. Sit. Katsuki doesn't move, staring down his teacher with a sharp, "What I want?" Training. Aizawa begins, raising an unimpressed eyebrow at the teen, and nodding toward his mostly healed face. Yeah, so what? Katsuki spits, narrowing his eyes in an unspoken challenge. Aizawa lets out a long breath, leaning back in his chair. Cut the bullshit, kid. Katsuki glares, hoping his sensei will get the hint to leave well the F alone, but the man's expression is apathetic as ever as he gives Katsuki a deadpan look. I'm offering you a way out, why don't you take it? Katsuki's jaw clenches. A way out? He scoffs. Sure, you mean shipped off to a foster home that's sure to be worse than where I'm at now. Or even better, a group home where I can spend the rest of my days fighting off dumbass extras years younger than me until I turn 18 and they kick me out in my poor, pathetic butt. I'm not effing idiot. Aizawa blinks, incredulous. What kind of person do you take me for? Do you honestly think I'd take you out of an abusive household only to throw you into the system like Dash? Katsuki's eyes narrow, and he cuts his sensei off abruptly. Don't use that word. Aizawa sighs, mouth setting into a line of weariness. You can avoid the word all you want, but it doesn't get you away from the truth of your situation. Can I go? Katsuki asks, looking away and shoving his hands into his pockets. Aizawa drags a hand down his face. Yeah, whatever, get out of here. My offer still stands though. I will keep you safe if you're honest with me. The slamming of the classroom door is the only response Shoyuta receives. Izuku watches Kachan slam the classroom door and stomp angrily down the hall from the lockers he's currently positioned behind. Normally he hates how small he is compared to most of the guys his age, but every so often, instances like this make him thankful for his tiny stature and the help it provides for going unnoticed. Honestly, though, he hadn't meant to eavesdrop. But when the Baku squad had wandered out of the classroom down their most glaringly prominent member, Izuku put his ear against the door to 1A just to make sure everything was all right. After that, All Might always says that sticking your nose where it doesn't belong is the essence of being a hero. He'd only been able to pick up bits and pieces, and missed the last few sentences entirely in his mad dash for somewhere to hide, but Izuku's concerned, to say the least. Mitsuki-san had always been a somewhat violent person, but from the sleepovers and playdates he and Kachan had as kids, she'd always showed this underlying love for them both that overpowered any frustrations toward the boys and their various shenanigans. Izuku wonders when that changed, and if it had anything to do with Kachan's sudden mean streak in primary school. Either way, he has to talk to Aizawa-sensei. So after making sure his explosive friend is gone, Izuku lets out the breath he's been holding and cracks the classroom door open, peeking inside cautiously. The desks are empty, save for Aizawa-sensei, who's currently face down on a defeated hunch to his shoulders. Izuku bites his bottom lip, considering just closing the door and coming back another time, but a mental picture of Kachan's face this morning and all the times he'd shown up to school injured in ways Izuku privately thought were too precise for a group of neighborhood kids, stops him. I have to do this. For my friend. Izuku takes a deep breath. Aizawa-sensei? His homeroom teacher Jis, lifting his head and quickly wiping his face of all expression. Midoriya. How can I help you? Izuku slips inside, letting the door close softly behind him. Can I talk to you? Aizawa notes the teen's wringing hands and lack of eye contact, pinching the bridge of his nose. You heard our conversation? Izuku nods sheepishly. Sorry? I know I shouldn't have, but I've known Kachan my whole life, and I'm worried about him. Aizawa stands, gathering the stacks of papers on his desk, and shuffles them into a plain, one-shoulder bag. The faculty room should be empty. Let's take this somewhere private. Eijiro's been trying to convince himself that he's waiting for Bakugo out of nothing but the no one left behind bro code alone for the past 10 minutes now, and admittedly, it's not going as well as he'd hoped it would. Hell, he started counting the cobblestones in an effort to keep the image of his best friend sitting on a bed in Recovery Girl's office, covered in bruises given to him by an adult he should have been able to trust from flashing in front of him every time he blinks, but no matter how much he distracts himself, the past few days continue to play on repeat in his mind's eye. The bruises he flat out refused to talk about with Eijiro, their conversation on the roof, the sound of skin on skin and Bakugo's head whipping to the side. Eijiro shakes his head violently. Oh. Stop thinking about it. But as his friend's heated discussion over the difference between a fruit and vegetable had faded into the relative silence of UA's school grounds, the worry he'd been managing to keep under wraps attacks him with a vengeance Shigaraki would probably be jealous of. Eijiro treasures his friends, and to see one so clearly in pain that had gone unnoticed for so long leaves a sour taste in his mouth that no amount of lunch rush's food could cleanse. Honestly, he hadn't expected to see Bakugo until the end of the day. He knew firsthand how exhausting being on the receiving end of Recovery Girl's quirk could be, but the bell rang for 7th PRD, and suddenly, there he'd been, slinking into the classroom with his shoulders in their usual purposefully apathetic slump, looking generally better overall, but visibly more tired. His face hadn't been fully healed though, and after some probing, he muttered something about having to go back for another round after classes ended, and then promptly ignored any other questions or attempts to talk to him. But the idea that Recovery Girl had been too focused on other injuries to heal Bakugo's face made Eijiro's heart ache. A watercolor of black, blue, and red bruising, mixed with the odd scar or two on the blonde's torso, was forever seared into the back of the redhead's eyelids, and not in the way a solid set of abs on a particularly attractive person would occasionally linger in Eijiro's thoughts. Hell, the blonde hadn't even needed Eijiro's help keeping the other students at bay. The occasional warning glare was all that was necessary to close the odd mouth about to fire off a personal question or unnecessary statement. It both filled Eijiro's heart with joy and left a particularly painful lump in his throat to see him acting so normal in response to his classmates' antics. But judging how the teen still wouldn't look him in the eye, all was definitely not right in his world. Shitty hair? A familiar voice startles Eijiro back to the present, and he turns to catch sight of a shock of ash blonde. The hell are you doing standing around the gate? You forget something? Eijiro stiffens, reminding himself not to wince as he looks his friend in the eye, making sure to keep the bruising in the forefront of Fi's mind so the sight won't shock him, but the redhead blinks. There's no trace of the former purple and green swelling that had made a home on Bakugo's face this morning. Wait, did you go to Recovery Girl again? Bakugo rolls his eyes. No, Aizawa grew a healing quirk, what the F do you think? Well, that certainly explains why Midoriya keeps breaking everything. Must be a ploy to get Aizawa to use it? Eijiro laughs, feeling his heart soar at the hint of a smile in Bakugo's ever-present smirk. The blonde looks away, muttering something about the sun and brightness as he starts his walk to the station. Eijiro follows happily, glad his friend is feeling better. Oi, why the hell are you out here this late? Don't you usually walk home with the 3 idiot tears? Oh. Was looking at. Aijiro glances around frantically searching for some sort of excuse that won't come off as insulting to the other teen's pride, but pauses when Bakugo snorts, shoving a hand through his naturally spiky hair. Kenneth, I know you were waiting for me. It's all over that stupid face of yours. Aijiro feels his expression turn sheepish. Sorry bro, I was just worried after earlier. There's an awkward silence as they walk, broken by Bakugo's annoyed sigh. You gonna say it? Bakugo rolls his eyes, stop looking like a kicked puppy and spit it out. Are you okay, Bakugo? The blonde kicks a rock off the sidewalk. I'm fine. No, I mean, are you? If you go home, is she? Bakugo's huff cuts through Aijiro's nervous stuttering. I've been going back there for 15 years. One more day ain't gonna change shit. Last night did for me. Aijiro mutters to himself, pulling anxiously at his backpack straps. Bakugo takes a deep breath, visibly calming himself as he turns to face the redhead. Alright, here's what's gonna happen. I get that you're worried or whatever the F dash, but I'm getting real demons sick of people shoving their noses where they don't belong. So I'm going the F home, and you're gonna walk the actual goddamn way to your house, 'cause I know for a fact you don't live around here. Got it? Aijiro opens his mouth to protest, but Bakugo cuts him off. Nope. Shut the F up. I never asked for your goddamned pity, and I sure as hell ain't accepting that sheet now. Kirishima. With that, the blonde storms off, and Aijiro finds himself rooted to the spot, watching as his best friend walks away for what feels like the millionth time that day, trying to convince himself that the ache in his chest has nothing to do with a certain blonde stomping back into a hell that the redhead can't even begin to save him from. The house is eerily quiet when Katsuki finally gets his butt through the door, mentally and physically exhausted from the day he's had. Moments after entering and calling his regular greeting, he knows the old hag isn't home, Dad poking his head out from the kitchen a split second later only further proving his assumption. Masaru's face splits into a delighted grin at the sight of his son. Katsuki, how was school? Katsuki sends him a confident, sheet-eating smirk, fighting down the hint of annoyance pooling in his stomach. Not a word about the previous night's events, nor a comment on Katsuki's bruise-free face. It was like the screaming match never happened, and that's just how it worked when it was the two of them alone. Ip sees the blonde off to all hell, but he figures that a hovering parent would probably be worse than just avoidance, so Katsuki he can deal with it, even if it never fails to leave a sour taste in his mouth. Fine, Katsuki says with a shrug, towing his shoes off and slipping on his house slippers. Where's the old hag? Oh, she went out with Inko about an hour ago. Katsuki's jaw clenches in an effort not to roll his eyes. Great, so a 50-50 chance of her coming home drunk. Just what I need after today. He stuffs his hands in his pockets to hide their clenching, casually strolling into the living room. How long's she gonna be gone? Dad grins. They're celebrating, so I'd say it's safe to say she won't be home till pretty late. Got any homework? Nope. Katsuki states, flopping himself down on the couch and sighing into the soft cushions. God, he needs a nap. Dad's face lights up. Well, in that case, you up for a cooking lesson? Katsuki closes his eyes briefly, knowing he can never say no to Dad, and tips his head over the back of the couch to give the old man an upside-down smirk. Hell yeah. A quick trip to the local market later, and Katsuki's starting to get a little irked. So, ya gonna tell me what the F we're making here? He asks, trying to shove his hands in his pockets despite the metric fuckton of bags he has hanging off his arms. His dad simply keeps walking. Not yet. Katsuki sends a groan to the sky. Mind setting everything out? I need to find that darned recipe. Masaru asks, already striding out of the room. Katsuki stares at his retreating back incredulously. What the F am I supposed to set out if I don't even know what the sheet dash? His dad hums thoughtfully, pitching his voice loud enough for Katsuki to get the hint that he's being ignored. It's gotta be around here somewhere. Oh my effing whatever, Katsuki grumbles, pulling food items out of the plastic bags and setting them on the counter at random. Found it? Masaru exclaims, rushing back into the kitchen, only to look around in mock confusion. Why'd you take all this out? Tantanmen isn't that complicated. Katsuki throws his head back and screeches, but Dad merely chuckles, shuffling past his dramatically enraged son to put what isn't necessary into its respective places, and sends the teenager a fond smile when he has what he needs laid out. Let's get started. Finally, Katsuki grumbles, not bothering to wipe the smile off his face. Half an hour later, they're seated at the table, a bowl of tantanmen in front of each of them respectively. Itadakimasu. There's a moment of silence as they enjoy their food, before the quiet gets too much for Dad, and he breaks it with the classic, "So, how was school?" Katsuki swallows his bite. Annoying, he states, and promptly shoves another large portion into his mouth. Dad raises an eyebrow at the display. Care to elaborate? Katsuki rolls his eyes, taking his goddamn time chewing before responding. Sue him, these noodles are spicy as F and it's delicious. Fingy extras shoving their noses where they sure as hell don't belong. Dad hums at that, glancing up hesitantly. You mentioned Mitsuki caused drama in front of your class. Did that have something to do with today? Katsuki raises his gaze slowly, searching his dad's face. They never talk about the old hag when she isn't around, like it's some kind of an unspoken agreement or one of those bullshit taboo topics. Yeah. Dad twirls his chopsticks in his noodles, a conflicted expression flickering over his features. There were heroes there, right? Ever wonder if they could? The brunette trails off, glancing pointedly at his son. Katsuki snorts. Hell the F-no. What? Dad blinks, seemingly taken aback at the heat in the teen's tone. Katsuki spits. I can handle her without their goddamned help. Dad's eyebrows furrow, looking troubled, but Katsuki they could protect dash. No. Katsuki yells, slamming his hands on the table. Effing let it go. Dad flinches, eyes going wide as he stares at his son, and Katsuki feels his heart stutter to a stop. Sheet. I'm sorry, thanks for the food. He murmurs, pushing his chair back and practically fleeing the room. Katsuki wait, Dad calls after him, but all he receives is the distant sound of a door closing. F-. What was he thinking? Katsuki couldn't let his temper flare in front of Dad like that. The guy wasn't even Aizawa-sensei pushing for answers he doesn't motherfucking need, or shitty hair giving the blonde those soulful, pitying eyes that make him want to FNG destroy everything in his FANG path because the redhead was the only person who didn't goddamn look down on him. That's his dad he just raised his voice to. His wonderfully kind, lovingly idiot father, who stood by while the old hag beat him into the ground for years without saying a word, F-. Is she always like that? Kirishima had asked with the saddest eyes Katsuki had ever seen on the boy. It's not Dad's diamond fault that the hag is completely FING psycho. Well, besides the fact that he married the beach, and had Katsuki's ungrateful butt. You're under my protection on and off campus? Aizawa-sensei said so matter-of-factly that Katsuki had to pause for a moment. Considering his teacher, the literal pro-hero Eraserhead, was proclaiming that Katsuki deserved to be fought for even. Off-campus was kinda awe-striking. Damn it, when the hell did breathing get so FNG hard? Do I need to be concerned about the safety of your household? Aizawa asked, deadpan expression never changing, but that glimmer of something protective and caring in his eyes striking Katsuki speechless. God damn it, he just wants to live in the type of homes his classmates talk about. Somewhere Dad doesn't depend on him for protection, and a place where he doesn't have to let the old hag beat on him because she needs some way to release her stupid FING anger issues. Just somewhere he could ifnj relax without having to look over his shoulder every goddamn second for the other shoe to drop. I've seen you take worse hits than that and get back up swinging, but she dragged your dirty laundry out in front of the entire year, and her words weren't exactly motherly or acceptable to say to any child, ever. Aizawa states, looking at Katsuki like he could see and understand every thought running through the blonde's mind. The expectations of UA coupled with the weight of holding a broken household together as the foundation crumbles beneath him is crushing Katsuki, and he doesn't know how much longer he can take it. I want you to be safe, Kirishima had said as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. As if that was a possibility for him. A knock at his door startles Katsuki off the bed he's collapsed on, and he lands on the floor with a thump and a muttered curse. Katsuki? His dad asks tentatively, voice meeker than usual. The blonde sits up, rubbing his sore back from where it had made contact with the hardwood, and methodically slows his breathing, wrestling his panic attack into something more manageable. I'm sorry for pushing you earlier. I just want you to be safe. Katsuki feels his lips purse. Damn it, he shouldn't be mad at his old man, but ever since the hag's little shitfit, he's been struggling with his general thought process at home. It doesn't help that his teachers and friends have been shoving their opinions about his life down his throat, and shit's getting real fang confusing. I set out the stuff to make cookies. Dad offers, a plea in his tone. They're your favorite. Katsuki opens the door. Spicy chocolate chip? You betcha. Dad smiles gratefully, before his face scrunches into a mixture of disgust and relief. I honestly don't know how you stand the things. Katsuki isn't really in the mood for forced casualty, but it's been fing years since he and Dad made cookies together, and effed it, he's getting soft. Fine. Dad's smile almost makes it worth it. I love you, ya know that, kiddo? Katsuki grunts, leaving it at that as they go through the motions of preparing the best fang cookies on the entire goddamn planet. But as they pull them out of the oven, and Katsuki takes a deep breath of the hot air that smells like the best childhood memories he's fing got, he makes a decision. Dad doesn't deserve a second of the shit old hag puts him through, and Katsuki's starting to realize he might not either. I love you too, old man. Class the next day passes by in a blur. Auntie Inko had sent Katsuki and Dad both a text about Mom staying the night at the Midoriya's, so they'd been able to get an actual good night's sleep for once. Katsuki uses the school morning to study his butt off, finally able to concentrate without the ever-present ache in his bones. His classmates seem to have gotten the hint to leave him well the effed alone, so he has all the peace and quiet he needs to get shit done. But of fang course Katsuki's good karma can't last, because Aizawa-sensei stops him before he leaves for lunch, giving him some bullshit, cryptic order to meet in one of the conference rooms after school. So here the F he is, standing in front of a door he's not nervous about opening, F you very much. Just hesitating. Making the scruffy son of a beach that sent him here wait, 'cause he's petty like that. He's probably waited long enough. Time to get this shitstorm over with. Katsuki kicks the door open, taking pride in the way the occupants inside jump. Wait, occupants? Katsuki pauses, narrowing his eyes at a nervous-looking present Mike and ever-stoic Aizawa-sensei seated on a low couch. The blonde enters cautiously, leaning against the wall furthest away from the two pro-heroes, crossing his arms protectively in front of his chest as he gives the room his most suspicious glare. Whatever the F you want, I'm having none of it. Aizawa sighs with all the long-suffering exhaustion of a teacher in charge of 20 stubborn and self-sacrificing teenagers. Sit down, Bakugo. He demands, blunt as ever. Katsuki sneers, which is met with a very unimpressed eyebrow raise. 2 minutes and 47 seconds later, Hizashi counted, Aizawa smirks triumphantly, and Katsuki plops down on the couch with a frustrated groan. Fine, the F is going on? He snarls, glaring disdainfully at the decorative pillows, as if personally offended by the embroidery. Present Mike gives him a 1,000-watt smile, electing to ignore the past few minutes of tense silence. Tea? He offers cheerfully, brandishing a green teapot with obnoxious yellow flowers on it. Katsuki stares at the absolutely horrible design, lip curling into a snarl. No. Aizawa clears his throat, giving the teenager a pointed look, and Katsuki mutters a selection of choice words under his breath. 2 sugars, 1 cream. Present Mike smiles, humming as he pours and stirs the drinks. We're here to talk to you about your home life. Aizawa states as Present Mike hands over their cups, and Katsuki lets out an irritated huff to cover the way his chest seems to compress at the words. Oh thing hell. Give it a DMN rest already. Present Mike gives Aizawa-sensei a sharp look for the less than tactful introduction, which Katsuki notes with interest. Perhaps his homeroom and English teacher are closer than he previously thought. We want to help you, Bakugo. We're just gonna need some information on the situation first. Think you could humor us, kiddo? Katsuki takes a sip of his tea. Tactfully stated, he'll give present Mike points for that, but like hell a kind word or two is gonna make Katsuki give up that easily. Yeah, he's planning on telling them, but he's gonna make them FING work for it. Besides, buying time might give him the opportunity to figure out why the actual his scruffy homeroom teacher seems so invested in Katsuki's home life that he brought a colleague to try and convince the teen to snitch on his old hag. Aizawa blinks slowly, jaw clenching with obvious annoyance. How come? Katsuki lifts a shoulder in a casual shrug. I can't. The adults exchange an unreadable glance, and if that doesn't set Katsuki on edge. What's holding you back, little listener? Mike asks gently, spoon clinking as he stirs another packet of sugar into his tea. I just can't. Katsuki spits, fists clenching in his lap as he reminds himself that he's got to give them something to get Dad out of their hellhole. Aizawa leans forward, the manic gleam in his eye just a bit too close to the one Mom gets when she's in an especially bad mood, and Katsuki feels his shoulders tense. What can't you do, Bakugo? The man asks in a low tone. Actually, this, Katsuki could get them out by himself. Stop interrogating me. I can't. That's that. Present Mike pushes Aizawa back with a gentle hand on the man's chest, giving Katsuki the space he needs to breathe. Alright, that's fine. You don't have to share anything you don't want to. Katsuki sighs, feeling himself relax back into a more casual posture. After a conscious effort to calm his breathing, he side-eyes the men in front of him warily. Can I go home already? Aizawa scowls. No, not until you tell us why the hell you won't let show Yuta. Present Mix's sheer volume alone is enough to stop Aizawa in his tracks, but the glare the blonde sends the scruffy man has Aizawa sitting back with his arms crossed, glancing away as if pouting. Katsuki blinks back his surprise. He isn't sure what the that was, but Diamond, his homeroom teacher, is whipped. The thought brings a smirk to his face. You're free to go if you don't want to be here, but I'd hope you decide to stay. We want to help, that's all, Mike states, seemingly speaking to both student and teacher at the same time. Katsuki sits in silence, staring down at his tea as he considers his options. He could tell them right here and now, accept whatever the hell they're trying so desperately to shove down his throat and potentially be free of the bullshit he's been dealing with for the last few years. UA staff would probably be extremely annoying for the known future, and there's no way he could keep all this drama under wraps. His so-called friends can and would, but their idiotic buttes right into his personal business. But Katsuki and Dad could get far the hell away from their current house and live their lives in peace. Honestly, that alone might be worth the bullshit. Or he could keep his trap shut, go home to a potentially set-off mom, come to school with more bruises tomorrow, and keep living this goddamn hell until he scavenges the means necessary to rent a crummy apartment somewhere the hell out of Dodge. There were heroes there too, right? Ever wonder if they could? Katsuki drags a hand down his face, regretting his decision before he even opens his mouth. I can't just leave. FING complicated. There's a moment of thick silence while his teachers regard their student with barely concealed unbelieving stares, and Katsuki gazes into his teacup. Unsurprisingly, Aizawa is the one to break the tension. Define complicated. Katsuki's fingers tap on his knee as he tries to sort out what he's gonna say. Alright, hear me out. Mom's got some anger issues. It's not really her fault, but anyway, she's always needed some kind of release for that sheet, and that's where I come in. Dad will let her walk all over him, but I don't take her sheet like he does. Never have. Present Mike holds a hand up to stop Katsuki. You're saying you talk back? Katsuki snorts. Do you literally even know me? I yell back. Aizawa's lips press together tightly, and Mike counts his breaths to keep from asking why the this kid can't make things easier on himself for once, but Katsuki recognizes the expressions, face tightening in a scowl. You seriously think I'm gonna take that sheet lying down? What the hell's she even gonna do? Make my life miserable? Newsflash, she's already been accomplishing that since I was 5. Hit me? The FS that gonna do? Leave a bruise, break a bone at worst? Pathetic. Kill me? Who? Hell can't be any worse than living in that goddamn house. That's not exactly healthy, Bakugo. Mike tries to intercede quietly, but Katsuki cuts him off with a murderous glare. Trust me when I say that I'm well the F aware. Wouldn't it be better if you went along with what she demanded, or laid low long enough for her anger to blow over? Aizawa asks in a controlled tone. Katsuki rolls his eyes condescendingly. No. Why? Aizawa presses, a hint of urgency in his tone. Katsuki's mouth stays firmly shut. Mike tries again. How do you know dash? I used to give in. Katsuki's voice is quieter than the two teachers have ever heard it, but the words seem to echo around the room, and they freeze, staring intently at the teenager in front of them. I played the part and I played it well. I was a close-mouthed little puppet at home. I did what she asked, the moment she effing asked it, and I convinced myself that I liked it. There's a pause. Why did you stop? Aizawa asks tentatively, as if he's not sure he wants to hear the answer. Katsuki's fists clench, nails biting into his palms. She hit Dad. Present Mike sends a sharp look to Aizawa, which Katsuki pretends to miss. Her anger bottled and built cause she didn't have anyone to take it out on, so one night she cracked and I wasn't there to stop her. That wasn't your fault. Mike remarks firmly. Katsuki's eyes flash. Like hell it wasn't. She hurt him and she hurt him bad. He had a broken arm and his nose was gushing blood all over the goddamn carpet cause he can't defend himself for shit. And I came home from a sleepover find him unconscious. Don't tell me that wasn't my fault. Bakugo, Aizawa's voice is urgent, but calm. That wasn't on you dash. Shut the F up. I wasn't there. I could have stopped her. But I wasn't. Even. Katsuki's voice breaks and he takes a moment to collect himself before going on. After that, I started to talk back. I acted out at school, hung with the wrong crowd, skipped classes, and goaded her into being so royally set at me that eventually, she stopped going to Dad and came straight for my ungrateful butt. Aizawa's face pulls into an expression Katsuki can't quite read. Did he ever try to stop it? Katsuki scoffs. Dad's not that kind of guy. He's good. And he doesn't deserve the shit Mom throws at him, but he sure as F can't stop her. So letting your mother beat you into the ground is your responsibility? Aizawa demands, eyes narrowing at his student. Katsuki responds with a shrug, rolling his eyes when Present Mick's mouth opens indignantly. Oh chill your F dash, it's better me than him. I'm angry, brash, have the emotional capacity of a DMN teaspoon, but he's patient, always smiling, caring, and I'd do anything to keep her from hurting him. Present Mike seems to latch onto his last sentence. Is that how you got the injuries you showed up with yesterday? Katsuki looks away. Yeah. She was already said when I came in the door, but I probably could have made it to my room all right. I was about to give her whatever the F she wanted so that I could go the hell to sleep, but when Dad walked in and tried to sign at me to go, I saw a bruise around his wrist and I lost my sheet. So you let things escalate because she hurt him? Aizawa sits forward, an understanding light in his eyes. Katsuki barks a laugh. Teach, IFING escalated sheet. She was mad enough to go after him, so it was pretty DMN obvious that leaving her alone wouldn't have ended well. Present Mike steps in before Katsuki's homeroom teacher has the chance to respond. That's very brave of you, Bakugo, but you shouldn't be the sole protector of your father. Katsuki launches up from his seat, sending hot tea flying. I effing know that. But there's no way in hell I'm leaving him there alone. Alright, that's fine, please sit back down. Present Mike suggests patently, not even blinking at the display of anger. Katsuki flops against the couch with a tsk, crossing his arms. We'll make sure both of you get out of there. Do you have a way to contact him? Aizawa asks, pulling out his phone. Katsuki side-eyes the man, a thought suddenly occurring to him. Wait, what exactly are you gonna do about my mom? Present Mike raises a triangular eyebrow. Why do you ask? She shouldn't be locked up. She's a good person, just needs some way to tone down her temper. Honestly, she wasn't nearly this bad till a few years ago when she started taking meds for her depression. It's not her fault the goddamned doctors effed with her emotions. Katsuki answers honestly. That's gonna be a bit harder to work around. Aizawa sighs, pinching the bridge of his nose as if warding off an oncoming headache. If you were 18, we could set you and your father up with a place to stay and figure out the rest, but I'm not sure I can report this without her being punished for her actions. Katsuki thinks on this, ideas formulating in his mind. What if I speak for her in court? What? Katsuki looks up. What if I go to court and ask them to send her someplace she can get help, like a mental hospital or rehab? Present Mike looks thoughtful. That could work actually. Would your dad speak for her as well? Katsuki snorts. I could get him to. Aizawa gives him a concerned frown. And you're okay with standing in front of a court of law and defending the woman who's abused you for who knows how many years? Don't use that word. Katsuki spits, hackles rising. They're going to use it. Aizawa tells him bluntly. Katsuki rolls his eyes. She's my mom, I can't just give up on her, no matter how much of an a-hole she is. You're not her keeper, Bakugo. Present Mike reminds him gently. Katsuki huffs. Yeah well, she was mine, and when she wasn't hitting me or getting sheet-faced, she was alright, so I'm not gonna give up on the woman who raised me. Even if she also. Don't make me effing say it. Aizawa gives the teenager an appraising look. That's very brave, kid. Yeah, whatever. Can I even go now? Present Mike chokes on the sip of tea he'd just taken. Now hold up, little listener, I'm not sure that's a good idea. With what you've told us, I can't legally let you go back home. Katsuki's eyes narrow, instantly defensive. I've got to tell Dad and get my sheet. Aizawa shakes his head. You can do that after we have her in custody. Having you go home today really isn't logical dash. Katsuki cuts him off, setting his teacup on the table with a dull thunk. Okay, first of all, I've been going home every day of my goddamned life, F you very much. Secondly, there's no way you've got a case open, and even if you do, there's sheet that's gotta go through before you can remove me, and my curfew's at 4, so I'm already pushing it. Aizawa blinks slowly, taking in the knowledge that the teenager's definitely done his research. Nizu has a case building. Present Mike grins sheepishly. You're a minor, so we actually do have the authority to keep you here. No, Katsuki spits. I'm not even leaving my dad while your legal sheet goes through just to make you fuckheads feel better dash. Aizawa holds his hands up in a placating gesture. Alright, how about we compromise? Present Mike sends him a warning glare, and Katsuki focuses on him with a mixture of determination and suspicion. Hizashi and I'll let the staff, the officer on your case, and Nizu know it's going down tonight, and we'll show up in a few hours to press charges. That way you'll get to go home, let your dad know ahead of time, and we get you out tonight. Katsuki considers this for a long moment, before nodding. Alright, you got yourself a deal. The adults smile, and Katsuki sneers at them as he throws his backpack over his shoulder and books it the F out of the room. Katsuki skids onto the porch of his house, sweating and breathing at exactly 4, despite every instinct screaming at him to get inside as soon as physically possible. He spares a moment to get his breathing under control before shoving the door open. Within seconds of calling his usual greeting and closing the door none too gently, Katsuki earns a sharp whack to the back of his head. Don't slam the effing door, you gremlin! Mitsuki yells, getting up in his face. Katsuki's response is second nature as he fires back with just as much volume. Don't slam your hands against my effing head. I'll do whatever I want, you ungrateful brat. She screams back, grabbing a fistful of his hair. Katsuki clenches his jaw to keep from wincing as he feels a few strands being pulled loose. Oh my god, shut the F up, you hag, I have homework. You don't get to boss me around. I'm the parent here. Mitsuki indignantly shouts back. Katsuki rolls his eyes. Yeah, and you're doing a shitty FING job of that. Get the hell out of my way. Mitsuki splutters, grip loosening on his hair, and Katsuki takes the chance to duck around her and stomp up the stairs, opening and slamming his door after tossing his backpack in. Without his schoolwork in peril, he sneaks back to the banister, listening carefully to make sure she's chilled the F out. He can just make out irritable grumbling and the sound of a sewing machine whirring as she goes back to work, and Katsuki lets out a relieved breath. Truth be told, he'd done his meager homework on the train. Right now he needs to talk to Dad. With the coast clear of the raging shitfit that was his mother, Katsuki creeps down the stairs, foregoing the last few steps, and simply hoping the banister to avoid the landing in view of Mitsuki's sewing room. The back door's in full view of his mother, so he carefully makes his way to the front door, placing his socked feet so as not to make any unnecessary noise. He waits to open the door, unlatching it with the whirring of the old hag's sewing machine, and shuts it in the same manner. It's the beginning of summer, and the sky is clear and blue. A faint breeze ruffles Katsuki's hair as he sits on the rough concrete steps to pull his shoes on. He takes a deep breath, savoring the sounds and scent of grass that comes with impending summer. On a day like this, Dad will be in the garden. Shoyuta doesn't waste a single moment of time. Seconds after Katsuki's rounded the corner of the hallway, he's practically sprinting to Nizu's office. He ignores Hizashi's protesting shouts, flying through the hallways with reckless abandon, and throwing the principal's door open with a bang. "Where's the effing file?" he demands, not bothering to mask the pure rage in his tone. Nizu calmly looks up from his tea, giving Shoyuta a once-over, noting the frazzled appearance and dangerous glint in his eyes, and moves to a filing cabinet, pulling a key from his vest, without the usual fuss. "I take it you got him to talk?" the bear mouse dog man says conversationally, more of a statement than a question. "He's going back there as we speak cause he's frustratingly stubborn, and even more protective," Shoyuta grumbles, pulling out his phone and speed-dialing Detective Tsukachi. Hizashi enters the room with more tact than his husband, knocking on the door frame with an annoyed expression. "Shoyuta, what the ever-loving F?" Shoyuta ignores him in favor of the call that just went through. "Naomasa? This is Eraserhead. You know the investigation we discussed involving Bakugo Katsuki?" "Yeah, we just got confirmation of the situation from the kid himself. I'm gonna need a warrant for arrest." "Thanks, I'll meet you at the station as soon as possible." The phone closes with an audible click, and Shuta's focus narrows on the file Principal Nizu sets on the coffee table. He schemes through the papers, not fully processing the information in front of him. "Do you have a copy of this?" "Hey, old man." Masaru jumps, startled, but smiles at the sound of his son's voice. "Katsuki, how was school?" The teenager shrugs. Actually got some sheet done today." "That's good to hear, son. Your classmates finally get the hint." He teases gently. Katsuki scuffs his shoes against the cobblestones almost nervously, and the teasing smirk drops off Masaru's face, as he turns to give the teenager his full attention. "Yeah, about that. I did what you asked me to last night. Aizawa-sensei and present Mike know." Dad takes a moment to process that, eyes wide. "Wait, really?" Katsuki gives him a small, shaky smile. "Yeah, they're gonna do it tonight." Masaru drops onto a nearby bench. "Wow. How long till?" Katsuki shrugs again, visibly more relaxed than before. "Couple of hours probably. Just wanted to warn you in case sheet goes down." Masaru is still reeling from this new information, but the warm feeling in his chest won't go unacknowledged. "I'm proud of you, Katsuki." The teenager shoves his hands in his pockets, obviously embarrassed at the praise. "Yeah, whatever. I'm gonna start on dinner." With that, he turns on his heel and heads back toward the gate, disappearing around the side of the house without a sound. Masaru watches his son walk away, a hope blooming in his chest that he hasn't felt in years. Shoyuta and Hizashi meet Detective Tsukachi at the station approximately 20 minutes after the phone call with a folder full of information, and are led into Naomasa's office with little fanfare. "You brought the files?" Naomasa asks the moment the door is closed, and Shoyuta holds out the folder. The detective flips through it, face pinching in a mixture of anger and sympathy as he scans through the report from Recovery Girl and the notes from Nizu, before getting to the pictures. He swallows visibly, and shuts the folder with a definite snap. "You said he's home now?" Hizashi shifts uncomfortably. "I tried to get him to come with us, but he didn't want to miss his curfew and he said he needed to warn his father." "And you got confirmation that his mother did this to him?" Shoyuta nods. "What's his father's place in this?" "Victim," Shoyuta states. Naomasa frowns. He can't be unaware of what's going on. Has he made any attempt to report her himself? Hizashi's glasses flash, not quite hiding the protective gleam in the eyes beneath. "I'd like to ask him that myself." Shoyuta squeezes the blonde's hand reassuringly. Katsuki stands up for him vehemently, and apparently regularly takes beatings to ensure his safety. I'm not certain of the relationship, but we should hear them both out before pressing charges to Masaru as well. Naomasa nods, accepting Aizawa's words without protest. Normally I'd want to talk to the kid myself and get his account on the record, but considering that he's confided in two pro-heroes, and with the report Principal Nizu and Recovery Girl have put together, I have the means to arrest her with or without his testimony. Shoyuta lets out a relieved breath, noting the way Hisashi's hand relaxes in his. However, both men look up. His presence in court is going to be unavoidable. We're going to need him as a witness to ensure the family's properly justified. Shoyuta winces, remembering the way Bakugo protested against his mother's arrest. Yeah, about that. He's been against imprisoning her on account of a medication increasing her temper, so he's most definitely gonna plead to get her into a rehab facility. Naomasa sighs heavily. Of course he is. Shoyuta has to hide his smirk in the folds of his capture weapon. He loves his job, don't get him wrong, but goddamn, it's nice to see someone other than UA staff bemoan his current students' sheer talent for being a pain in the butt sometimes. Either way, the kid's in a dangerous situation, and his mother will face charges for what she's done to him and the father. Naomasa continues. Hisashi nods grimly, satisfied with Mitsuki-san receiving justice for what she's done to one of his most attentive students. Detective Naomasa stands decisively. Alright Eraserhead, let's go get your kid. Shuda's resulting grin sends shivers down the spines of everyone present. They've just sat down to dinner when a knock comes at the door. Katsuki and Dad exchange looks, as Mitsuki frowns and barks, "Katsuki! Get the FING door." The blonde nods, moving to do as he's asked without the usual retort. He's not surprised to see his teachers with polygraph, the nickname Katsuki had given the detective he'd talked to after the USJ, but the officer with a cat head startles him enough that he blinks at the group stupidly until a shout comes from the other room. "Katsuki, what the F's taking you so dash?" It cuts off as Mitsuki turns the corner and spots the men standing on her porch. "Can I help you?" "Bakugo Mitsuki?" Polygraph asks, and Mom nods, approaching the door far more civilly than she had a few moments ago. Katsuki subtly shifts around her, moving closer to where Dad had just appeared in the entrance of the hallway, and subsequently out of her reach. "You're under arrest for domestic violence, child abuse, and child endangerment." Polygraph states without preamble, letting Cathead step forward to cuff the blonde woman. Mitsuki's eyes go wide, before she spins to face her son, fire blazing in her gaze. "You little sheet. What the F did you tell them, huh? God, I have half a mind to dash." She's cut off by a very familiar gray scarf wrapping tightly around her, gagging her in the process. Katsuki doesn't think he's ever seen Aizawa look as murderous as he is now, hair raised and eyes glowing, and if that's not one of the most badass things he's ever witnessed. "I'd suggest you leave that sentence unfinished." The enraged pro-hero growls, eyes red like a demon straight out of hell. Katsuki grins. "Thank you, Eraserhead." Polygraph says, turning toward Katsuki and Dad. "I'd like a word with you two as well." "Sure, whatever, just let me grab something," Katsuki states, turning back toward the dining room to put the curry he'd made into travel containers, shoving them into bento boxes with a set of chopsticks and a water bottle in the lower compartment of each. Present Mike follows him to the kitchen, noting the previously untouched plates with a note of regret. "Sorry if we interrupted your dinner." Katsuki shrugs, tying the boxes and disappearing up the stairs. The pro-hero follows him, watching as the teen snags his backpack and another bag from under his bed, shoving a bento into each. He slings them over his shoulders, still holding a third box. "That for your mom?" Present Mike asks casually as Katsuki brushes past him. The teenager pauses at the top of the stairs. "Yeah. She may be a beach, but she doesn't deserve to go hungry," he says with a forced tone. They emerge downstairs to see Mitsuki being loaded into the back of a police car. Katsuki passes the extra bag to Dad, and jogs across the lawn, catching Polygraph and Cathead before they get into the front. "Can you give this to the hag?" he says gruffly, not meeting either of their eyes. "We didn't get to eat dinner." The officers give him a considering look, before Polygraph shoots him a tight smile, taking the bento with a "Sure thing, kid." Katsuki nods, satisfied, and returns to the porch. All set? Present Mike asks as the teen approaches, and Katsuki shrugs. Alrighty then, let's head to the station. Katsuki's head is still reeling when he's led into an interrogation room, and he stares at his reflection in the one-way mirror as the situation starts to really hit him. He barely registers Polygraph saying he'll be back in a few moments, leaving Katsuki in the bare room with Aizawa-sensei and Present Mike. He's too deep in his head to pay them any mind. Was confiding in his teachers the right decision? What if Dad gets charged too? Where would he even stay if both his parents were put under trial? Oh God, when the news breaks, not if, there's no FING way that UA can keep this case under wraps, not with a hero student involved. His class is gonna flip their sheet. Maybe he could stay with shitty hair till things blow over. But then his overly concerned classmate would be all up in his face for the details and Katsuki isn't ready for that. Actually though, having the redhead on his side could work in his favor. Shitty hair's a pretty good shield from the rest of the class with how protective the guys seemed in light of Katsuki's current situation. There's no doubt that if asked, he'd keep the extras away to his dying breath. Of course, that all depended on the extras not swarming him the literal moment he steps a foot onto UA's campus. Wait, is he even going to class tomorrow? Hey kid. A voice questions softly, and Katsuki doesn't even register the sound as he continues to spiral. They wouldn't keep him out of school for this, right? Katsuki was going to be number one, and missing days meant he could fall behind. But honestly, was he even ready to go back? His head feels fuzzy, and he's not sure he's even accepted that mom's no longer a threat to Dad and him. Would he actually be able to focus when his reality is just a fog of panic and confusion? Bakugo! A stern voice says from beside Katsuki, but he's past the point of listening. Did he seriously just risk his future reputation and chances at becoming number one because his teachers pushed a little too hard? Was shit really going down because of one FING moment of weakness? He could have waited it out, made the same excuses he'd been giving since elementary school, and let the sports festival incident fade from everyone's memories. Once out of UA, he'd do what he'd planned, climb the rankings, and use his own money to get some shitty apartment away from his hell of a home. Seriously, he was talking 5 to 6 years here. He could have kept his sheet under wraps for that long. He's made a goddamned mess of things. Bakugo! The voices were starting to sound urgent as he continued to stare at the table, hyperventilating. Well, no use thinking about what he could have done. He'd set himself up in this shitty situation, so he needs to be the one to get out of it. He'd worked hard for years to keep his home life under wraps, but it was out in the open now, and he couldn't afford to lose his cool. Not in front of people he barely knew, not with his future on the line. How could he spin this? There had to be some way to get his old life back. If words had gotten him into this situation, they could well get him out. He just had to think of a lie good enough to... Wait, Polygraph was the interrogator here. Katsuki was seriously screwed. Katsuki! Two calloused palms grab his shoulders and Katsuki reacts. An explosion begins and fizzles out as a pair of glowing eyes and long tendrils entered Katsuki's line of sight and he blinks. Kid, can you hear me? You need to calm down. It's going to be okay, I promise. Katsuki blinks again, trying to process what his teacher's saying. It's just you, Mike, and I. We're in a police station. She can't hurt you or your father here. You're safe, but I need you to breathe. Sensei? Katsuki whispers. Aizawa's shoulders drop, relieved. Yeah kid, it's me. You're having a panic attack. I'm not going to hurt you. Can you shut off your quirk? Katsuki stares at his hands, noticing the twitching as his quirk tries and fails to spark up. He inhales a breath, and forces them to stop on the exhale. Aizawa's hair flops back into his face, but he doesn't look away from the teenager he's focusing on. Alright, good job. Now we're gonna calm your breathing. Can you follow my count? Katsuki nods, letting Aizawa lead him through a few breathing exercises until he's no longer gasping for breath. A steaming cup is placed before him, and he wraps his hands around it, soaking in the warmth, and suddenly realizing how cold he feels. Aizawa must have noticed the shiver, because he speaks up. Did you bring a jacket? He asks quietly and Katsuki nods, gaze dropping to the backpack at his feet. Aizawa digs through the contents, removing an obnoxiously orange hoodie with white stripes down the sleeves and an embroidered middle finger on the shoulders with the words F off printed boldly on the front. He doesn't comment as Katsuki wriggles into the thing, but his raised eyebrow says more than words probably ever could. Katsuki flips up the hood, sinking into the soft fabric to avoid the stares of his homeroom and English teachers. Aizawa sighs, taking a seat across the table from the teenager, and déjà vu much? You're not in trouble, kid. This is a stressful situation, it's understandable to be overwhelmed with all the changes happening. However, I would like to ask a few questions if that's okay? Katsuki nods from under his hood. All right, could you tell me what you were panicking about? Katsuki's silent for a long moment. Am I going to school tomorrow? As of right now, I'm not sure. The downward tilt of Katsuki's lips are just visible under the folds of orange, and Aizawa sighs. Do you want to go to school tomorrow? Katsuki doesn't answer, staying silent until the door opens, and Polygraph takes the empty seat next to Aizawa. Are you okay to start? The man asks him, a worried note to his tone. Katsuki nods. All right. My name is Detective Tsukachi Naomasa. For the record, my quirk is lie detector, and I'm obligated by law to tell you that this conversation will be recorded. Please state your name. Interviewer, Detective Tsukachi Naomasa. Interview, Bakugo Katsuki. Attending parties, Eraserhead, Aizawa Shoyuda. Present mic, Hisashi Yamada. Time, date and location, 6:23 p.m., May 25th, NPA District 13. Begin transcription. TN, my name is Detective Tsukachi Naomasa. For the record, my quirk is lie detector, and I'm obligated by law to tell you this conversation will be recorded. Please state your name. BK, yeah, whatever. Bakugo Katsuki. Written in the kanji, as, burst, and, for, win, and, myself. Tien, thank you. Now, I'm sure you're aware, but this interview is being conducted because of Bakugo Mitsuki's abusive behaviors toward Bakugo Katsuki. Tien, do you not agree with the previous statement? He has an aversion to the word abused in terms with his mother. Tien, thank you, Erasehead. Bakugo, I'll refrain from using that word if it'd make you more comfortable, but I'd appreciate an explanation as to why if you're willing. BK, Angie, whatever, it's not her fault, she's said all the time. I think the meds her crackhead doctor has her on make it worse or some shit. I'll tell you what you need to know, but I don't want to send her to jail. Tien, so what is it that you'd like to get out of this interview? PM, I think he wants to make a plea for her to go to a rehab facility. BK, yeah, what loudspeaker said. Tien, she'll still need to face justice for the crimes she's committed. BK, I get that. Still isn't her fault she's so pissy though. Bakugo, anger alone isn't warranted punishment, but she chose to take that anger out on a child, and that's unacceptable. Even if your plea is heard, she's still gonna have to serve time. BK, fine, can we get on with this already? Tin, of course. Can you confirm that these injuries were caused by Bakugo Mitsuki? For evidence, see UA's file BK 13774. BK, pause, yeah, that was the old hag. Tien, what happened during the events that you got these injuries? BK, I got home late from the festival. House was dark, so I thought she was asleep, but she ambushed me soon as I had my shoes off. I gave her lip and she went off about respecting your elders or some shit. Dad was lurking in the hallway as she yelled, and he signed at me to go along with it so she wouldn't get too riled up, but he had a bruise around his wrist and I lost it. Tien, defined lost it. BK, I gave her shit about hitting me in front of the entire FNG class and being a go-dawful parent. Really doesn't take much to set her off. Tien, so you provoked her verbally because she hurt your father? BK, I didn't pause if she was mad enough to go after him, she'd do it again soon as I was out of the picture. She needed to get it out, so I stepped in. Tien, you were protecting your father from her? BK, she's a crazy beach when she's mad. I can take it, but Dad's not really the type. Generally the parent protects the child, wouldn't you say so, Bakugo? BK, If NG hell, I thought we already had this discussion. Tin, I'd like to hear why you seem to be protecting your father, myself. BK, scoff dad's not pause any hell, dad's not like me. I'm angry, brash, have the emotional capacity of a DMN teaspoon, but he's kind as F dash. The guy's a saint when it comes to patience, and he's one of the most caring people I've ever known. He's good, but he sure as hell can't stop mom when she's in a rage. Tien, do you know this for a fact? BK, yes, I FING do. Tien, please elaborate. BK, really? You don't have dad's hospital visit in that dumbass folder? PM, your father was sent to the hospital by your mother? BK, FING hell. Yeah, I was in 5th year. The doctors had just given her some sheet for depression, the stuff she still takes now, and I went over to an extras for a birthday party or some sheet. Came back home to find him lying in a pool of his own blood. Mom was nowhere in sight, so I called the ambulance. Tien, did you or your father tell the doctors what caused his injuries? BK, if I know. They never asked me sheet. Tien, and your father didn't press charges against your mother for attacking him? BK, again if I know. I was Tien. Were there any other hospital visits caused by her? BK, Hack broke my arm 6 months after, but other than that, no. PM, did you tell the doctors what actually happened when she broke your arm? BK, though. Gave them some bullshit about my quirk accidentally going off, and they didn't ask again. Each, sigh that's gonna make it harder to prove your mom did it. BK, if I care. Tien, let's get back to what I have in the folder. We've already collected enough evidence from the sports festival celebration, but I'd like to hear your side of events. BK, yeah, sure. Pause Hag showed up late. By the time she actually made it, the extras were already being mushy and FNG obnoxious, but they parted like the red FNGC when she came through. Beach was said. She strolled right up to me before I could say a word, and hit me the second she was in range. Room went dead quiet, but she didn't give enough FS to notice and just went at it. Tien, she was angry about your performance in the festival, despite the fact that you won, correct? BK, honestly I think she was angrier that they had to tie me up to present the medal. Ditch, I'm sorry they what? BK, oh right, forgot you weren't there during that part. I was FNG said that none of the extras gave me a good fight and the match with Icy Hot was just plain embarrassing. I didn't want the FING medal, and I said as much to the fuckwads trying to make me take it, but they eventually got fed up with my sheet and chained me to a block of concrete. Itch. They chained you to a slab of rock on live television so you'd take a medal that you had every right to refuse? BK, yep. Itch, you're giving me names later. BK, can I come with when you tear those sons of beaches a new a-hole? Tin, coughs meaningfully let's get back on track gentlemen. BK, sheet sorry. A pause oh yeah mom was screaming her head off at me and, yeah I probably should have just let her, but F that. I mouthed off about her hitting me with the whole FING you're watching, and she hit me again cause she's dense as hell. Honestly I probably should have just gone with it, but I was so thoroughly out of patience, that I snapped right back at her till I knew I could get her to calm the F down. Then I left, and she followed me like a goddamn dog. Tin, did she catch up to you outside? BK, Hano. I was so effing done with everything, I just quirked my way up to the roof of the main building and hid like a coward. PM, that's not cowardness, Bakugo. You were overwhelmed by the day's events. It's natural that you'd want some time to yourself. Tien, I agree. You de-escalated the situation and got to a safe place. That's not cowardness, that's being smart. BK, scoff you sound like shitty hair. He's the one who found you first, wasn't he? BK, yeah, I was up there for half an hour, tops, and then the dumbass appeared, sitting next to me and tried to start a discussion about feelings. Tien, I'm sorry, who exactly is this shitty hair? BK, Kirishima Aijur. He's got a hardening quirk, and his hair's spiked like a mountain on steroids. Obnoxiously red too. Tien, thank you. Please continue. BK, I told him to F right off, and blasted to some random but training area to let out steam. Sensei found me punching the sheet outta a brick wall. Also tried to start some mushy CRP about being in a safe home environment or whatever. Told him to F off, but he took me to Recovery Girl anyway. Tien, is that why you were late getting home? BK, yup. Tien, Barth, thank you. I have a few more questions and we'll be done. BK, get on with it. Tien, were hitting and yelling her only methods of releasing her anger? BK, shrug. I mean, there was this closet she'd lock me in sometimes if I mouthed off too much. Tried to use no food as an incentive, but only Dad and I can cook, and if she banned me from the kitchen, Dad would refuse to set foot in the place too, so that was only saved for when I really F'd up. Other than that, Tien, alright, and last question. If possible, we'll have your father take custody of you, but if that proves to be an issue, would you be willing to stay with Eraserhead and Present Mike? They're registered foster parents and… BK, I knew it. You are dating. That's married to you, kid. BK, holy shit, that's FANG awesome. Tien, coughs meaningfully your answer, Bakugo? BK, pause. If, and only if Dad isn't able to, then yeah. I'll stay with them. Tien, alright, thank you for your patience. Transcript end. You okay, kiddo? That was a lot of people all up in your space. Mike asks as soon as the detective shuts the door behind him. Katsuki rolls his eyes with a scoff. I'm effing fine, aren't you two chuckleheads gonna go interview my parents? The adults share a look. Well, that depends on you, little listener. If you'd rather us stay, we can always get the transcripts later. Oh my effing god. Katsuki huffs, pulling the bento he'd packed out of his bag. I'm not a kindergartner with separation anxiety. Go to your effing job so I can eat my dinner in peace. Alright, if you're sure. Sansa is gonna stick around while we're gone. Let him know if you need anything. Aizawa assures, pointing to the cat-headed detective sitting in the corner. Katsuki blinks. When the F did he get in here? God, was he really that out of it when they first put him in this room? Whatever, get out of my face already. Present Mike laughs, heading for the door. Okay, point taken. See you in an hour, kiddo. Aizawa studies Katsuki for a long moment, before putting a hand on his shoulder and mumbling. You did good, kid. Katsuki stares after his gruff teacher, stunned for a moment as the door closes behind the two men who are currently the closest anyone's ever gotten to getting Katsuki out of his shitty home life. Suddenly, the feels a little colder. Interviewer, Detective Tsukachi Naomasa. Interviewee, Bakugo Masaru. Attending parties, Eraserhead, Aizawa Shoyuda. Present Mike, Hisashi Yamada. Time, date and location, 7:06 p.m., May 25th, NPA District 13. Begin transcription. Tien, my name is Detective Tsukachi Naomasa. For the record, my quirk is lie detector, and I'm obligated by law to tell you this conversation will be recorded. Please state your name. Bakugo Masaru, written in the kanji, as burst, and for Excel. Tien, thank you. Now, I'm sure you're aware, but for the transcript, this interview is being conducted because of Bakugo Mitsuki's abusive behaviors toward Bakugo Katsuki. BM, Sai, I suppose you want me to talk about her. About us. Tien, if you're alright with it, I'd like to hear your side of the story. BM, it's not alright and it'll probably never be alright. But if it's for my son. Huff of laughter. Well, I have to start sometime. PM, we appreciate anything you can add to the investigation. BM, pause. I met Mitsuki when I was 19. We were both freshman design students drowning in art classes. She's always been the more confident one, so she approached me first, and I guess we just clicked. Was she always as violent as she is now? BM, oh goodness no. That came after she had Katsuki. I'm not sure if the PRGN-CY hormones got to her or if raising a child was just too stressful, but the doctors diagnosed her with depression and anxiety and put her on medication. That's when she started to change. Tien, do you know what medication she's on and when she started taking it? BM, redacted from public view under the Civilian Privacy Clause A84. Tien, thank you, and when did she start hurting you and your son? BM, well, it was about 4 months after she got the meds. Katsuki was 3, the first time I remember her slapping him. She was really upset and started crying immediately after, but it slowly just became normal for her to physically lash out. And you just let her hurt him? BM, they're both so hot-headed, once they started, it wasn't something I could break up. But you didn't seek help, or take him and run. You sat idly by. Tien, Ahem eraser. If you don't restrain yourself, I won't hesitate to remove you from the investigation. BM, no I understand. You're right. I'll be kicking myself for years over that, but Katsuki's protective to a fault. He doesn't show it in the way you'd think, but he deflected her anger again, and I couldn't stop either of them. Do you know how that feels? Watching the one good thing in your life destroy himself because you're too weak to save both of you? PM, that must have been horrible. Tin, I'm sorry to have to ask, but have you ever raised a hand to your son? BM, absolutely not, I could never. TN, for the transcript, that registered as true. Katsuki mentioned something about you being involved in a hospital visit when he was around. What happened there? BM, when I broke my arm. Honestly, I'm not sure why she was angry that time, but she came home fuming, and I guess I said something to set her off. Next thing I knew, Katsuki was crying, and then I was in the back of an ambulance. Sorry, it's been a while and that night was kind of a blur. Tien, to clarify, Mitsuki gave you the injuries you sustained that night? BM, yes. Tin, did she hit you any other time? BM, also yes, but after that night, Katsuki did his best to make sure that didn't happen. PM, Katsuki also said that you had a bruise on your wrist the night of the sports festival. What happened then? BM, his attitude at the sports festival got her in a frenzy, and she grabbed my wrist when we were watching it. I think he noticed it when he got home and assumed she was mad enough to go after me if he didn't provoke her. I tried to tell him, but by then he was snarling back at her, and I got out of the way. TN, so you didn't see what happened next? BM, no, I went back to our room. Mitsuki came in an hour or so later, still set off, but she just took a shower and went to bed. Tin, alright, that's about all I need here. For legal reasons, we'll have Katsuki stay with Eraserhead and present Mike until the trial, but is there anything else you'd like to add for the investigation? BM, not that I can think of right now. I should look into getting a lawyer though. And thank you for housing Katsuki. He's in your care. Transcript end. Interviewer, Detective Tsukachi Naomasa. Interview, Bakugo Mitsuki. Attending parties, Eraserhead, Aizawa Shoyuda. Present Mike, Hisashi Yamada. Time, date and location, 7:58 p.m., May 25th, NPA District 13. Begin transcription. TN, my name is Detective Tsukachi Naomasa. For the record, my quirk is lie detector, and I'm obligated by law to tell you this conversation will be recorded. Please state your name. BM, this is bullshit, I'm not saying a word without a lawyer. Interviewee name Bakugo Mitsuki, kanji, for burst, and kanji, light, gleam, shine and self. Tien, that's fine, we've got one on the way, but in the meantime, I'm going to ask a few questions. BM, well, I know my effing rights. Great. Let's discuss the sports festival celebration where you publicly hit your son in front of a group of hero students, parents, and pro-heroes. BM, he's my son, and I can DSPN him however the F I want. TN, hitting your child is considered abuse. So let me pose a question. How long have you been abusing your son? BM, scoff, I didn't do shit to him, kids at FNG wimp if he calls a slap or 2 FNG abuse. TN, so you admit to hitting Katsuki? BM, I didn't do anything other than whack him around for being a weak piece of shit every so often. The world's harsh, he'll never learn if no one teaches him that it's gonna spit on him and crush him under its heel at every turn. And you think hitting a child is the best way to teach him that? Not I don't know, giving him the tools and skills to overcome whatever hardships he's going to face in the future while making sure he has support to grow into the type of young man that can confidently do so? BM, hey, I was raised the same as I raised him, and I turned out just fine. PM, considering you think it's okay to physically beat a child after an extremely long and taxing experience, and then use a traumatic event against them in front of all their friends, I beg to differ. BM, who the F are you to tell me how to raise my son? Did you BRH the egotistical BSTRD? Did you clean up after his sheet fits? Did you give him a roof to live under, and food to eat, and clothes to wear for 16 FNG years? I don't got him think so. Congrats on doing the absolute minimum that's expected of a parent. Do you want a medal? Teen, ahem, that's enough, we're not having this argument now. Eraserhead, present mic, if you continue to aggravate the suspect, I'll remove you from this interview. BM, scoff, not much of a FNG interview, since I ain't saying sheet. TN, pardon the interruption. As I was saying earlier, you admit to having hit your son? Where's my lawyer? Tin, they're on the way, but I'd like you to answer the question. BM, F off, I'm not here to be lectured on my own goddamn brat. Tin, alright, then let's talk about your husband. BM, what about him? TN, Katsuki mentioned an incident in which your husband was admitted to the hospital. Is there anything you can tell us about that? BM, Masaru was hospitalized? First time I've heard of that. First time you've... Entrance of lawyer. L. Good evening, gentlemen. My client won't be saying anything further. Transcript and... Yamada pulled his husband into a hug the moment they stepped out of the interrogation room, though who benefited from it more, he honestly couldn't tell. Shoyuta was physically shaking with rage, and the voice hero himself wasn't doing much better. The FING audacity. Shoyuta hissed quietly in his husband's ear. I know. Yamada soothed, taking a deep breath to calm himself, and running a hand through Shuta's hair in the way he knew his husband secretly loved. But the kid's away from her now, and we're never letting him go back. Shoyuta huffs out an angry teeth. Like any hell I'd let that beach within 15 feet of Katsuki. Yamada smiles, pulling back and letting his crowd-perfected exuberant grin morph into a predatory flashing of teeth, as he agrees with a dangerous note in his voice. You and me both? Katsuki blinks bleary eyes at the sound of the door opening, squinting sleepily at his teachers. Hey there, little listener, ready to head out? Present mic prods softly, giving the blonde teenager a winning smile. You done? Katsuki goes to ask, but it comes out as a glorified croak, and he scowls at his inability to speak. Present mic shoots him a thumbs up. For now. Though you'll be coming home with us tonight. Hope that's okay with ya. Katsuki shrugs, yawning as he tries to wake himself up. While the pro-heroes had been out of the room doing whatever the F goes along with interrogations, the teen had found himself drifting off. Sue him, it had been a long but week, and he'd burned a lot of energy on stupid shit like keeping class 1A out of his FNG business. He deserved a goddamned nap. Aizawa wordlessly hands him a water bottle and granola bar, and Katsuki downs both in record time. He clears his throat, running his hands through his hair in an attempt to feel relatively normal again, and glances at the two-way mirror to check his appearance. God, I look like sheet. It's whatever. These chairs are FNG uncomfortable though. Katsuki grumbles, pushing away from the table and slinging his backpack over his shoulders. Aizawa snorts. That's the point, kid. Dumb sheet if you ask me. Katsuki shoots back, stepping out the door present mix holding for him, and into the practically vacant hallway. The underground hero follows, keeping pace and raises an eyebrow. You want the criminals to be comfortable? This time, it's Katsuki's turn to snort. As if, should have better chairs for people like Dad and I. Victims? Aizawa deadpants, not even flinching at the venomous glare the teen sends him. Shoyuta, don't antagonize the kid. Present mic intervenes before Katsuki can open his mouth to respond. Let's just get back home. I think all of us could use some sleep. Katsuki rolls his eyes, but doesn't protest. Katsuki's morning starts out with the smell of cooking food and low, hushed voices. It's so wildly different from the usual way he wakes up that he spends a good few seconds trying to remember if he dropped into any suspicious-looking holes in the ground last night to explain what FING other reality bullshit he just popped into. But as he squints at the ceiling, which is whiter and devoid of the popcorn texture his bedroom has, the previous day's events replay in his mind's eye, and he sighs, letting himself relax back into the pillows. He was at the Aizawa/Yamada apartment because he opened his FING trap and got his mom arrested. Absolutely perfect. Broken under the pressure from less than half a dozen people. FING outstanding hero he was going to be. Katsuki? A quiet knock at his door snaps the teenager out of the quite frankly pathetic pity party he'd been throwing himself, and he blinks dumbly at the slab of wood before his brain catches up to him and he can muster a non-committal hum that's pitched just loud enough for the occupant outside to hear. Oh wonderful. And now I can't even FING respond like a normal person. Real great goddamn start to your day, Katsuki. Not impolite at all to the people who dragged you out of your effing mess yesterday. Breakfast is almost ready, kid. Be out in 5. Katsuki blinks, but manages to use his actual FING words this time like a competent human being. Okay, be there in a sec. Aizawa seems satisfied enough with that, footsteps retreating down the hall, and Katsuki gives himself another minute to feel sorry for himself, before drowning his emotions in anger and getting ready for the day. Admittedly, he doesn't pay a lick of FING attention in his morning classes. Deku, Ponytail, or Four Eyes will give him their notes if he asked, and besides, he has too much on his mind. So when the lunch bell rings, he's the first out the door, hand-packed bento under one arm as he climbs the stairs to the roof. Stepping out into the sun is weirdly reminiscent of the night he sat here during the sports festival, and Katsuki finds himself taking what feels like the first real breath he's had since before the tournament. The sky's a brilliant blue, not black speckled with stars, and the wind whipping his hair and uniform contrast with the peaceful night air before. Not to mention that the smell of fresh-cut grass and summer sun are about as far as one could get from the cool, crisp scent of dew and moonlight, but even so, Katsuki feels the peace that had led him to come here the first time. So he takes a seat by the railing he'd planted himself down on what felt like weeks ago when it had really only been 4 days, and opens his lunch. 3 cat-shaped onigiri stare back at him with a roll of tamago, strawberries cut into heart shapes, and a portion of broccoli with flower-design carrots that looked suspiciously like some kind of fancy bush in spring. There's even a note wrapped around his chopsticks, which Katsuki reads in a state of shock. Hey there, little listener. Thought you could use some perfect little meowing faces to make your daisy a little more excellent. Present Mike, smiley face. What the F dash dot? He whispers so quietly he can barely hear it over the wind. Of course, Shitty Hair takes that exact moment to find Katsuki staring at the note and bento in such utter confusion that he's rendered speechless, and has the audacity to laugh. Katsuki snarls, tucking the stupid FNG note into his pocket, and shoving an onigiri that's far cuter than it has any right to be in his mouth. The redhead only smiles, plopping down next to him, and ignoring the glare he receives for his efforts. Hey man, nice bento. Did you make that yourself? Katsuki huffs, shoving the note into Shitty Hair's chest for him to read, so he's not obligated to answer stupid questions. Oh my god. Present Mike made you a bento? That's so cool, dude. Katsuki snatches the note back, putting the DMN thing into his pocket, and digging into his broccoli. Shitty Hair studies him, brows scrunching together in a way that's definitely not cute. Shut up. The rest of the world could get its nose out of Katsuki's business. I don't want to pry, but you were distracted all morning. And something's obviously bothering you now. Is everything okay? Fine. Katsuki bites out, taking a swig of his water. The redhead only hums, sounding like he really doesn't believe that. Something's kinda telling me otherwise. Something can F the hell right off. Shitty Hair sighs, come on man. I know these past few days have been stressful, and I'm not gonna pry if you don't want me to, but if you want to talk about anything, I'm here. Katsuki shrugs, poking apart his meticulously rolled tamago. Other people have it worse, and can keep their trap shut about it. The redhead pouts at him. Dude. There's always someone who has it worse, but we're not talking about them. We're talking about you. Katsuki lets out an irritated sigh. Okay, I've had worse. Happy? Now I'm just concerned. Oh my effing dash, Katsuki cuts himself off, with a small explosion to burn off the sweat in his palm before it can run down his chopsticks and into his food. Leave me alone. Shitty Hair doesn't even flinch, giving him a 1000-watt smile. Nope. Not till you tell me what's wrong. Have I ever told you how absolutely FING annoying you are? Katsuki questions with a glare, stuffing a strawberry in his mouth. The redhead's smile somehow becomes even brighter. Up. Every day. Good, it's true. Katsuki smirks. Shitty Hair chuckles, but after looking over his friend again, frowns. Seriously though, what's going on? Katsuki finally gives in, setting his chopsticks down. Aizawa and Loudspeaker showed up at my house yesterday. The redhead sits forward, picking up on the change in mood. Oh, they arrested my mom, Katsuki states, figuring there's no reason to beat around the bush. Shitty Hair's eyes widen comically, and he raises a hand to his mouth. Sheepman. I had no idea. Anything I can do? Katsuki huffs, raising a shoulder in a half-hearted shrug. Dunno. I'm probably gonna have to testify in court, and if so, that sheet's gonna hit the news. Shitty Hair's eyebrows scrunch in concern. God, that's horrible. It's whatever. Just not excited about the whole effing country knowing I let my old hag beat on me. Katsuki sighs, staring at nothing. Whoa, hey dude. The redhead immediately goes on the defense, grabbing Katsuki's shoulder and forcing him to make eye contact. If anyone thinks less of you cause of that, they're a really shitty person. And what your mom did to you wasn't okay, like at all, but it's not on you. I guess wait, did you just effing swear? Shitty Hair blinks. Yeah. Don't FING do that sheet? Katsuki growls, taking a bite of his last onigiri to the sound of the redhead's laughter. I hope you know how hypocritical that is, coming from you. Shitty Hair laughs, nudging him with an arm. Katsuki shoves him back with a smirk. Oh, F off, Shitty Hair. Not helping your case, man. They sit in a comfortable silence, watching students and staff mill about on the wide lawn in front of UA, feeling the wind ruffle their hair, and working on their previously neglected lunches. Unsurprisingly, it's Hair for Brains who breaks it. Where are you staying right now? Like, are you safe? Katsuki huffs. Yeah, I'm with Aizawa till the court date. My dad's still kinda suspect, and they don't want me staying with him, so Sensei volunteered to keep an eye on me. Shitty Hair lets out a relieved breath. That's good. You like it there? It's effing weird, Katsuki states. Oh, how so? Katsuki sighs. They're so godmed nice all the time, it's driving me insane. They? Wait, Present Mike made you that bento. Are they roommates? Yeah. Katsuki replies convincingly. But Aizawa doesn't want the class to know, so keep your mouth shut. Oh my god, are they dating? Shitty Hair exclaims, eyes sparkling. I said shut up. The whole FA school's gonna hear you. Katsuki growls, putting a hand over that ridiculously loud mouth. Sorry. But seriously, are they dating? That's not my business dash. Holy shit, he totally is. Katsuki rolls his eyes. Just don't tell the extras. Teach is a private guy, and the whole school will know within a day. Gotcha. My lips are sealed. Shitty Hair promises, throwing a fist in the air for emphasis. A bell rings from somewhere inside the building, signaling the students below to pack up and start heading inside for afternoon classes. Katsuki shoves the last of his lunch in his mouth and closes the lid to his bento, promising himself that he'll make dinner tonight as a thank you. Let no one say that Katsuki was ungrateful. He paid back his FING debts. Ah man. Hair for Brains pouts, gazing longingly at his practically full bento. I didn't get to eat my lunch. Katsuki rolls his eyes. Would have been able to if you weren't bothering me all break. Nah, hanging with you was way more important than my lunch. The redhead exclaims, smiling at Katsuki like the explosive teen was the center of his world. Yeah. Race you to class? Katsuki mutters, already sprinting. Hopefully the mad dash would be enough to pass off his quickly reddening face. Izuku watches Kachan and Kirishima race down the stairs from his hiding spot behind the door with a furrowed brow. He's been working behind their backs with his mom and Aizawa as one of two first-hand witnesses in the case being built, and though he was told that he didn't have to participate in the upcoming trial because of his age, he's strongly considering asking them to reconsider. After all, a hero helps those in need, and right now Kachan needs help getting out of that house. So he sends a text in the group chat between Aizawa-sensei, Officer Tsukachi, Present Mike, and him that was created the first day he stepped forward. Izuku 1202. I want to testify as a witness. Present Mike 1203. You sure, kiddo? That's a lot of pressure. Izuku 1203. I'm positive. Aizawa 1203. Fine. Get to class. Officer Tsukachi 12:04. I'll send in the paperwork. You should have it in 2 to 3 business days. Izuku 1204. Thanks. Aizawa 1204. Problem child. Izuku 1205. Smiley face. It's been a weirdly normal day, Katsuki thinks to himself as he packs up after the final bell. But he can't help feeling like it's the calm before the storm. Bakugo. Stay after class. Aizawa's monotone drawl orders with no room to refuse. Ah, there it is. Yeah, whatever. He huffs, shooing the extras away from his desk like a group of particularly pesky flies. His teacher? Foster dad? God, that's a can of worms he's sure the F, not opening here and now, waits for the last of the students to meander down the hall before unzipping his sleeping bag with a grin that promises suffering for any who dare to cross him. Katsuki raises an eyebrow as the man gestures him out the door. We heading home? Not quite. Aizawa growls, just barely not stomping toward the teacher's lounge. Katsuki gives him a once-over, making sure that the barely repressed rage isn't directed at him before speaking. Who said in your sleeping bag and where are we gonna hide the body? That actually gets a chuckle out of the man, and his pace slows. Remember how I told you there was going to be hell to pay for whoever thought it was a good idea to chain you to a rock during the sports festival? Katsuki begins to smirk. Yeah. We're about to tear them a new a-hole. Katsuki's grin is positively menacing. All right, kid. Here we go. Shoyuta warns Katsuki, already turning the doorknob. Let's give them hell. The explosive teen sneers. The door to the faculty room slams open under Shuta's hand, and he'd be lying if he didn't revel in the flinches it causes. The cackle behind him lets him know that the kid's loving the response as well. Fing brat. Though he doesn't let any of the fondness he feels show on his face as he addresses the group in front of him. Admittably, he's too sad to even have to give a minimal effort. Letting his voice drop to a dangerously low tone, he turns on his quirk and lets himself become the worst nightmare of every living person around him. Who in the ever-loving F thought it was a good idea to chain a child to a concrete block on live television? I just want to talk. The previously quiet staff room goes dead silent, pro-heroes looking to each other in mild terror at the protective rage coming off their usually stoic coworker. Hey Shoyuta, let's think logically about this. Nemuri approaches cautiously, like he's a feral cat about to pounce. Though at this point, that's not far from the truth. Oh, I've thought all I need to, Nemuri. And I'm giving you all the count to 3 to give me an answer I'll like. He was being belligerent dash, All Might starts to protest, but a pair of glowing red eyes stop him in his tracks. Katsuki had every FING right to refuse that medal, and you Dimin well know it. It was for the sake of the dash. Shuta's head WHPS around so fast he's surprised it doesn't fly right off his neck. Don't even FING start about it being for the sake of the viewers. I couldn't give a DMN about how it would reflect UA. This is FING minor we're talking about. One whose parental permission was not given, and even if it FING was, chaining a literal FING child to a rock in front of the entire goddamned world is completely unacceptable. The room is frozen as he takes one more look around for any other protesters. Finding none, he scoffs, throwing down a sheet of paper like the figurative gauntlet it is. Anyone, and I mean anyone involved, has 24 hours to write their name on this list before I open an investigation for child endangerment and unlawful restraint. If you fail to do so, I'm pressing charges. Understand? Every head in the room nods, and Shoyuta takes a breath to calm himself before exiting the way he came, doors slamming behind him. A loud laugh makes him blink, feeling the scratchiness of his eyes as his anger fades and his quirk deactivates, and he pulls out his eye drops. If they hell, their faces. At least half of them probably sheet themselves. Goddamn, that's the funniest effing sheet I've seen all week. Katsuki gets out between his mad cackling, and Shoyuta can't help but smile too. Glad one of us enjoyed that. He states, hiding his grin in the folds of his scarf. Oh, as if you didn't? Katsuki scoffs, finally getting over his bout of laughter. You have no proof? Shoyuta tells the cheeky little sheet, turning to head toward the train station. But Katsuki snickers, holding his phone in Shuta's view, a video on loop playing on the screen. He watches himself yell at his coworkers for a moment, before turning red eyes onto the blonde teen. Delete it. Hell no. It's been a few days since the arrest, and Katsuki's never been treated so much like the teenager he is. It's terrifyingly new territory. Being treated like an adult is familiar. Being responsible for his own FING needs is simply how he's lived his goddamned life. He's used to taking responsibility and expecting violence whether or not he F'd up. But now, he gets texts during his lunch breaks from his god, he doesn't even know what to call them. Temporary guardians? Asking how he's doing, and reminding him all the goddamn time that they care or some sappy shit. He's taken out to dinner. He gets one-on-one training, attention, and does it scare him? Things were easier when he knew how shit would go down, but ever since the arrest, he feels like he's playing Russian roulette with his expectations. He doesn't know when Aizawa and Yamada will realize how absolutely F'd up he is, and though he knows it's inevitable, Katsuki's not ready to give up the kindness he's somehow come to appreciate. For the moment, they're housing him in their shared apartment, and he's got his own room, but it's still FING weird. Probably because Katsuki doesn't know how to act in a household so firmly built on love and acceptance rather than violence, but he's trying very hard not to think about that. Before, his old hag would rage at the smallest things, throw plates, scream, and destroy shit for no collective FNG reason. Here, he wakes up to Yamada making breakfast, and Aizawa drinking directly from the coffee pot like the feral bastard he is, as they chat quietly about the day ahead of them. It's quiet and calm. Eerily so. In his house, silence wasn't a norm. The only quiet he got was in the early mornings when Katsuki got up to run. Here, it's peaceful all the FNG time, and it's putting him on edge. After school, Aizawa will grade or do crossword puzzles at the kitchen table, while Yamada watches some cheesy rom-com on the TV, and when Katsuki walks into the room, they'll look up at him with a smile, and ask him what he wants for dinner or if he'd like to help them make it. "I'm fine," is how he always responds, pretending to not notice the glint of disbelief and concern reflected in their eyes because, hell, he's not used to anyone but Dad looking at him like that. He couldn't open up to them even if he wanted to anyway. He doesn't know how. Katsuki can feel his breaking point inching closer and closer like a tsunami on the horizon, only able to watch as the wave of pent-up frustration grows bigger and bigger as it gets closer, and feels the chill of the shadow looming over him, blocking out the sun. But he doesn't know what will happen when it finally crashes down around him, and that FENG terrifies him. Especially because as Aizawa calls him to dinner, and they eat in comfortable silence, Katsuki has a nagging feeling that today's the day it finally catches up to him. He feels like his brain is a RBB band pulled too far back, and goddammit. He just wants them to FN hit him so he can finally understand. But at that thought, Katsuki feels shame curl in his chest, horrified that he misses the violence. His mouth pinches into a firm line as he robotically shovels food into this mouth and chews. His mind floating above the comfortable silence the apartment exudes when Yamada has one of his radio shows, wishing against all hope that Aizawa would just FANG snap already. It would make things so much easier. The breaking point comes sooner than he thought it would. The ever-present peaceful silence in the apartment has been nearly overwhelming, and Katsuki can feel his forced composure slipping as the crest of the wave starts to tip. Intellectually, Katsuki knows that his teachers are pro-heroes, and just want the best for him. They want to give him a home where he can thrive, but the part of him that's still trying to survive in a house that's crumbling around him is holding his breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. He's going to F up. He always does. He's going to make a mistake and he's going to get punished, because that's how it's always been, and he can't afford to expect anything different. Because it's all he deserves, all he should get, and that's that. The rushing of the waves gets worse, and something in him snaps. It shouts at him to hit, to yell, to break things. To become the mirror image of his old hag, 'cause that's all he's meant to be, right? To finally give in to the urge and see how far he has to go to make them. Hate him like he's used to. Katsuki just wants it to stop. Aizawa turns at the hitched breath the explosive blonde can't help but take, and his eyebrows draw together. "Everything okay, kid?" Katsuki takes a deep breath, ready to scream, hurt, break. But all that manages to come out is a quiet, "Sometimes, I wish that you would just hit me and get it over with." There's a pause, in which Katsuki refuses to look up from the plate of katsudon on the table in front of him. "Excuse me?" Aizawa's voice is scathing, and Katsuki's shoulders relax at the familiarity. Finally, he's gonna snap. "Katsuki, look at me," Aizawa says, his voice leaving no room for argument. Katsuki glances up, waiting with bated breath for the water to crash down around him and sweep him out into the sea of hurt, pain, and familiarity he grew up in, waiting to run out of stamina as the water crashes into a swirling mess around him, waiting to be pulled under and drown. "I need you to know that I will never hurt you." "What?" He stares uncomprehendingly at the man in front of him. Those gray eyes soften in an expression Katsuki can't decipher, hands loosely clasped on the table, not looking down at the teenager, but meeting eye to eye, and Katsuki blinks. He was expecting harsh anger, a verbal smackdown morphing into a physical one, not FING support. "I know you're good at hiding things, but if I'm even half correct with my suspicions, I need to make it very clear with you right now that I am not your mother. I may be strict, but never in a million years would I hit you, or any of my other students for that matter. Katsuki, look at me." Katsuki realizes his gaze had been shifting to stare at his plate, and he snaps his head back up to make eye contact. "I will never hurt you the way she did." "But..." Katsuki runs a hand through his blonde hair, pulling at it with irritation. "Do you mean it? Wouldn't things be easier?" Aizawa raises an unimpressed eyebrow. "How would hurting you make anything easier?" Katsuki lets out a frustrated huff. "Then hell, I don't know how you want me to act right now. I don't know the DMN rules, and I don't know the consequences of FING up. Obviously, I'm a burden. I've been freeloading at your house, eating your food, and both you and your husband keep going out of your way to check up on me, and I know that isn't easy. I'm FNG hard to deal with, and haven't done anything to repay you. I haven't even joined in on the sheet you keep inviting me to do, so you've got to be at least somewhat said. Why the hell wouldn't you be? I mean, you have to house me for F's sake. Wouldn't it be better if you just got your anger out now?" Aizawa stares at him. "The hell, kid? Alright, listen." Aizawa gets up from his place at the table, exaggeratingly telegraphing his movements as he places a gentle but firm hand on Katsuki's shoulders, ignoring how they stiffened under his grip. "You don't need to know how to act, because you're a good kid. But if you'd like to help around the house, we can make a chore chart and list of rules for you to follow." Aizawa pauses, obviously expecting a response. After a moment of hesitation, Katsuki nods stiffly. Aizawa gives him a small smile. "Alright, we'll do that today. Secondly, you need to understand that your being here isn't a burden." Katsuki opens his mouth to protest, but Aizawa cuts him off with a hand. "No, hear me out. You're here because we want you to be. Hisashi and I have been wanting to foster for some time now, which is why we had a license and a room ready for you as soon as you needed it. We're happy to open our home, especially to a student of mine. You're a great kid with a hell of a lot of potential, something I've found even more extraordinary after learning about your situation. And that leads me to my last point. Just because it's easier doesn't mean it's right. I have no resentment or anger to bottle up about you being here, and even if I did, there's no way in hell I'd take it out on you. Your attitude is a product of the home you grew up in and the need to survive, and I'm not going to push you to open up or join in on family activities, because that's for you to do when you decide you're comfortable. I ask because I don't want you to feel excluded, not because I think you owe me for being a decent human and getting you out of a bad situation. Do you understand?" Katsuki opens his mouth to respond, but no sound comes out. His brain feels like it's been rebooted and he's trying to load too many files at once. The tidal wave that had been looming over him is suddenly taken away, revealed to be only the surf lapping at his toes. The sun is rising over the water, turning his world into streaks of orange, yellow, and pink. A drop of water on his hand startles him back to the present, and he realizes with no small amount of surprise that a pair of strong arms are wrapped around him as his breath hitches, and silent tears drip down his face. He's warm, both from the body pressed close to his, and the rush of emotions he can't seem to place. So as his silent tears turn into choked sobs, he feels safe, protected, and supported for the first time in years.